Chapter 1174. Such a scene, coupled with the unique, mysterious temperament of the fire escape clone, immediately made the entire scene feel ethereal and illusory. Swoosh, 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 the sound of wind breaking echoed around the streets. These were obviously the ninjas of Mai, who rushed over after hearing the news. Is it Amatsukumi's fire demon? Yes, it should be her. The others would not dare to be so ostentatious. Why are the flames around her purple? Didn't the intelligence say that she is good at controlling a type of golden flame? Who can say for sure about Amatsukumi's matters? Be it the patrol team or the Umbu, when they found the suspicious person wearing the black gold-edged cloak of Amatsukumi and the flame-pattern mask, they did not act rashly. Instead, they scattered around the streets and began to closely monitor the fire demon as they whispered to each other. This purple flame is not simple. It's best not to look at it directly. At this time, an Uchiha ninja from the police force hurriedly warned everyone. The Mai ninjas around them only then realized that this Uchiha ninja from the police force had not only activated the 3 Magatama Sharingan in his eye sockets, but also had an extremely serious expression on his face. As everyone knew, the Uchiha clan was best at fire release and illusion. Therefore, seeing this Uchiha ninja's serious expression, everyone did not dare to be careless. They quickly looked away from the street, no longer looking directly at the fire demon of Amatsukumi that looked not real at all. Immediately, an Umbu could not help but ask the Uchiha ninja, "Is it an illusion?" The Uchiha ninja from the police force shook his head, wiped the fine sweat off his forehead, and said, I can't tell either. The Umbu beside him was startled. Even your Sharingan can't see through it? Uchiha Jonin sighed helplessly. Sharingan is also divided into strong and weak Sharingan. If the other party is the real Homusubi of Amatsukumi and not an imposter, then the other party must have Manjikyu Sharingan. In front of the Manjikyu, my Sharingan is no different from your eyes. After listening to Uchiha's explanation, the Umbu realized that even the elite Uchiha of the Jonin class has an insurmountable gap in strength between Amatsukumi's Homusubi and Homusubi. At this time, the surprise on Uchiha Jonin's face became more and more intense. His intuition told him that the scene in front of him might very well be an illusion, because he could feel a faint trace of mental power from the mysterious purple flame that lingered around Homusubi, and he also keenly noticed that the purple flame did not seem to have any temperature, and the ground that Homusubi walked on did not leave any burn marks. All of this indicated that the scene in front of him might very well be an illusion, but he repeatedly checked his brain, and there was no trace of chakra invading from the outside world. As a Uchiha Jonin with 3 Magatama Sharingan, he believed that even if he could not fight against the other party's illusion, he would definitely be able to tell whether he was under an illusion or not. So his common sense told him that he was not under an illusion, and the scene in front of him was not an illusion, but really existed. Therefore, he fell into confusion, completely unable to tell whether the scene in front of him was real or not. On a tall building in the distance, swoosh, swoosh, with 2 sounds of wind breaking, the 3 generations Naruto and Jiraiya landed on the roof of the tall building one after another. Kakashi, who arrived first, nodded and saluted 3 generations and Jiraiya. 3 generations looked at the street in the distance and asked seriously, "Can you determine the identity of the other party?" Kakashi shook his head. No contact so far, but looking at the other party's behavior, the possibility of him being an imposter is not big. He has been carefully observing for a while. From the beginning of the appearance of the other party, his steps were steady and calm, and he walked all the way to the Naruto building. His purpose is also very clear, so Kakashi feels that the possibility of him being an imposter is not big. However, in view of the fact that the village once pretended to be a member of Amatsukumi, he did not dare to rule out the possibility of others imitating the village and pretending to be Amatsukumi. After all, the members of Amatsukumi wear masks and cloaks, and it is difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. 3 generations frowned at this time and began to pay attention to the mysterious purple flame that lingers around Homusubi Then his brows wrinkled tighter and tighter, and finally twisted into a ball. Because even if he is known as the professor of ninjutsu and knowledgeable, he could not find any information related to the purple flame in front of him in his mind. Jiraiya, who is good at fire release ninjutsu, was surprised. What kind of fire release is this? Is it the same as the black flame of Amaterasu? Also some kind of Manjikyu Sharingan pupil technique? Whoosh, another burst of wind sounded. The shadow clone that Hyojin left in the village also landed on the roof of this tall building with a good view. Seeing Hyojin arrive, Kakashi quickly asked, "Kuroto, can you see anything?" Hyojin's shadow clone activated Byakugan, then shook his head. "The other party's mask and cloak are engraved with a sealing technique that can block my Byakugan's insight," Kakashi said. "It seems that we can only face it head-on." On the street, Hyojin, who was walking leisurely, naturally noticed the scrutinizing gazes cast by the ninjas around him, but he didn't care, or rather, this is the effect he wanted. This is not to say that he is deliberately showing off his newly developed flame release Kekkei Genkai, but he wants to use the purple flame to prove his identity. Because he no longer has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, he can no longer prove his identity by activating the unique Golden Susanoo, like when he came into contact with the village before. At the same time, the main purpose of his appearance this time is to collect the debt. Since he is collecting the debt, he should show a strong performance. If he sneaks it this time, it is easy to arouse suspicion, and it is easy to fall into a passive position when collecting the debt. Instead of bargaining with the village and pestering endlessly, it is better to show an extremely strong performance from the beginning. Let the village know his bottom line, and avoid misjudging each other and causing some unnecessary disputes. Not long after, Hyojin arrived in front of the Naruto building. At this time, the advisory elder group in the village and the shadow clone that Hyojin left in the village were already waiting there. The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1175. Sensing the mysterious purple flame that lingered around the flame devil at such a close distance, the group of elders felt an inexplicable sense of dread. The blossoms of purple flames swaying under the moonlight were dreamy and illusory. They looked like illusory shadows instead of real flames. Homusubi of Amitsukami, who was bathed in fire, also became hazy and illusory under this scene. It seemed real, but when Shinichi looked at it, it didn't seem so real. Genjutsu. For a moment, this thought appeared in the minds of all the elders. Even the generations of Naruto was no exception. Soon, the 3 generations of Tsuchikage, 4 generations of Leing, 4 generations of Kazekage, and 4 generations of Mizukage, who had been staying in Mai, arrived together in front of the Naruto building. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, Itachi, Jishue, Shinichi, and Sasuke, the 4 Uchiha, also arrived in a hurry. Everyone's attention was instantly attracted by the flame devil and the mysterious purple flame on its body. Many of them had seen the female Homusubi of Amitsukami before, but this time they clearly felt that the Homusubi in front of them was different from the past. In the past, although this Homusubi was also very mysterious, it was mainly because of the mysterious organization Amitsukami, and because she wore a mask so no one knew her true appearance. But now, Homusubi just stood there quietly, and it made people feel an inexplicable fear, completely unfathomable. At the same time, the purple flame that lingered around Homusubi also made them very afraid. All the Kage are powerful ninjas with both strength and experience. So just by observing and sensing, they can judge that the purple flame on Homusubi's body that they have never seen before is by no means simple. At the very least, it's a Kekkei level fire release. Needless to say, the Uchiha who were good at Genjutsu and fire release. As Genjutsu type Uchiha, Itachi and Shursui have already sensed the incomparably powerful mental power emanating from the purple flame even before they got close to it. And Shinichi, with his extraordinary perception, even judged that the power of the purple flame in front of him is probably above that of Amaterasu. It's just that it's constantly alternating between the real and the illusory, not as direct and overbearing as Amaterasu. Unlike the others, the four Uchiha almost arrived at the Naruto building and secretly prepared for battle. Itachi, Shursui, and Shinichi made a simple communication with their eyes. Then, they looked at Sasuke from the corner of their eyes. If Sasuke decided to launch a sneak attack on Balrog, they would immediately stop him. They can't be blamed for thinking too much. The main thing is that last time Sasuke dared to sneak attack Nagato, the leader of the Akatsuki organization who has the Rinnegan, it really scared them. Coupled with the fact that Sasuke now has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, his strength is far better than before, so they can't predict what the young Sasuke will do. Itachi, Jishui, and Shinichi secretly prepared for battle, which was instantly noticed by Sasuke with his amazing insight, so his heart sank, and he thought to himself, "Oh no, brother and the others are really going to make a move. I don't know if I can stop the three of them by myself." Although Sasuke is arrogant, facing Itachi, Jishui, and Shinichi this time, he still felt very guilty, and even his palms were sweating. At this time, Itachi, Jishui, and Shinichi silently began to adjust their positions, faintly separating Sasuke from Homusubi not far away. While Sasuke silently activated his three Magatama Sharingan and kept moving from side to side in his eye sockets, closely observing the movements of Itachi, Jishui, and Shinichi, and, at the same time, began to simulate the tactics to be used later in his mind. Seeing that Sasuke had activated his Sharingan, Itachi, Jishui, and Shinichi didn't dare to be careless and also activated their three Magatama Sharingan. Perceiving this, Sasuke frowned, and the three Magatama on his Sharingan quickly rotated above his scarlet pupil. In this way, the four Uchiha began to secretly predict and adjust each other's movements, carrying out a secret confrontation. Hyojin glanced at the four Uchiha who were acting a little strange, and thought to himself, "What the hell are they doing?" 3 Generations Naruto broke the silence at this time, walked up and said politely, "My village welcomes Homusubi's visit. Please come to the conference room to discuss in detail." With that said, 3 Generations Naruto made an inviting gesture. Hyojin didn't answer, just nodded slightly, then put away the purple flame, and followed 3 Generations Naruto and the others to the conference room in the Naruto building. Jiraiya's gaze stopped on Sasuke for a moment, then followed 3 Generations into the Naruto building. Watching Homusubi enter the Naruto building with several Kage and the advisory elder group, the 4 Uchiha standing in front of the Naruto building were relieved. At present, with their identity, they are not qualified to participate in the secret meeting of the village elders, so they did not rush into the Naruto building. Inside the conference room, under the signal of 3 Generations Naruto, Kakashi said to Hyojin, who was sitting down, "Homusubi, in order to prevent someone from impersonating you, can you confirm your identity to us?" Kakashi's meaning is very simple. He hopes that Hyojin can show his Susanoo like last time to prove his identity. Although Mai was in a passive position when dealing with Amatsukami, he has never abandoned the most basic principle. That is, no matter what kind of cooperation, he must first confirm the identity of the other party. Previously, when Hyojin and Itachi sang a duet, Tsunade also used a sneak attack to force out Itachi's Susanoo and verified the identity of Homusubi of Itachi. Only then did she agree to cooperate. It is precisely because of this that Hyojin performed the performance just now, so he was not surprised by Kakashi's request, and bluntly said, "Because of the development of the new Kekii, my Sharingan has some problems." "What new Kekii? Hyojin's calm words suddenly aroused a burst of exclamation in the conference room, among which the biggest reaction is undoubtedly the 3 Generations Tsukuha who mastered the dust release Kekii. Because the birth of the new Kekii is bound to threaten the status of dust release in the shinobi world. The dust escape technique had already become the symbol of the Hidden Rock Village. If the status of the dust escape technique was affected, then the reputation of the Hidden Rock Village would also be affected. Kuroto didn't explain much and directly spread out his palm, releasing a flickering purple flame in the center of his palm. Staring at the purple flame swaying in Hyojin's palm, Tsunade frowned and said, "Is this your newly developed bloodline elimination?" Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. There will be a third chapter later. Chapter 1176. Outside the Naruto building, Itachi pondered for a moment and said, "It seems that nothing happened. Let's go back first." Jishue echoed, "Well, it should be some cooperation between Amatsukami and the village. It has nothing to do with our Uchiha clan." Obviously, the two of them were worried that Sasuke would cause some trouble if they stayed here, so they decided to return to the clan's land first, and then ask Hyojin about the cooperation between Amatsukami and the village. Sasuke also had the same thought, so he glanced at the Naruto building with some reluctance, then followed his brothers back to the Uchiha clan's land. At the same time, he thought to himself, Sensei is representing Amatsukami to discuss cooperation with the village this time. Is it to deal with Akatsuki? With my current strength, I should be able to help. Shinichi didn't think too much about it, and was still immersed in the purple flame that Hyojin used just now, muttering, "It's really strange. Don't mention seeing that kind of purple flame. I haven't even heard of it before." Sasuke glanced at Shinichi calmly, thinking quite proudly in his heart, "This is Amatsukami's secret. I'm sorry, Shinichi-san. I can't tell you." In the conference room of the Naruto building, under everyone's gaze, Hyojin said in a flat tone, "This is the flame release Kekkei Jinkai elimination that I developed, and because of it, my Sharingan is temporarily having some problems." Looking at the swaying purple flame in front of them, everyone's feeling became more and more profound. This purple flame seems to contain some kind of psychic power. As long as they put in a little bit of concentration, they were shocked to find that their attention was involuntarily attracted by the purple flame. This is a kind of flame that has a psychic charm. Soon, everyone's heart shuddered, and they quickly restrained their thoughts. 3 generations Naruto pondered for a moment and said, "Your Excellency's flame escape bloodline elimination is indeed extraordinary, but it's hard for us to confirm that Your Excellency is Inferno from God's organization." Hyojin put away the purple flames. "How do you want to prove it?" 3 generations Naruto immediately said, "Our 5 great shinobi villages have cooperated with your organization many times. There is no need for you to wear a mask in front of us." The other Kage nodded in agreement. Needless to say, 3 generations still hoped to deepen their cooperation in order to obtain more information about Amatsukami. After all, Amatsukami is too mysterious, to the point that no one dares to deal with him at ease. So, if possible, the 5 great shinobi villages naturally want to know the true faces of the members of Amatsukami. After weighing the pros and cons, Hyojin reached for the mask on his face. Seeing Hyojin's action, everyone's eyes immediately focused on Hyojin's face. For them, this was a historical moment to witness the true face of Amatsukami. What did this flame demon look like? Could he be someone they had met before? All these questions would be answered at this moment. Soon, Hyojin took off the mask on his face, revealing the face of his fire release clone. Staring at the face of Hyojin's fire release clone, everyone was stunned. It was a strange and incomparably exquisite face. They had never seen such a delicate face before, and from his appearance, they could tell that the Flame Devil was not very old. He was only 16 or 17 years old. Of course, everyone present was a shadow rank powerhouse, so they wouldn't be shocked by superficial things like looks for too long. What really made them unable to recover from their shock was the unique aura of the Flame Demon, combined with his appearance and temperament. It was an indescribable aura, and just looking at it made these strong people subconsciously vigilant, suspecting whether they had fallen into a Jinjutsu or not. At the same time, what surprised them was that the flame demon who had taken off his mask had his eyes tightly shut. Seemingly aware of everyone's doubts, Hyojin, who had his eyes closed, explained at this time, "I'm sorry, I can't let you see my eyes, otherwise you will all fall into a Jinjutsu." Listening to Hyojin's explanation, Everyone quickly moved their gaze away from Hyojin's eyes. Obviously, they did not doubt Hyojin's explanation at all, because the temperament of Hyojin's fire release clone is too mysterious and illusory. Even if there is no chakra fluctuation, it seems to be some kind of jinjutsu, so everyone has no doubt that if Inferno really opened his eyes and revealed his Manjikyu Sharingan, then even as Kage, it would be difficult for them to resist. And just in case, the Season 3 Generations Naruto gave a look to Hyojin's shadow clone, who was in the conference room. He signaled Hyojin to observe with the Byakugan. After all, at this time, there is no mask covering the seal technique. The Hyuga clan's Byakugan should be able to see the real situation in the eye sockets of Inferno. Hyojin's shadow clone immediately activated the Byakugan, pretending to observe carefully, and then nodded towards 3 Generations Naruto. 3 Generations Naruto completely removed the doubts in his heart, and seeing that no one openly questioned him, Hyojin secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't open his eyes just because the Byakugan in his eye sockets is the original Byakugan, not the Sharingan, and the Byakugan is too conspicuous. Once he opens his eyes, he will immediately be exposed. Putting on the mask again, Hyojin went straight to the point. Have you prepared the commission and compensation from the last time? 3 Generations Naruto, who was already prepared, nodded. Please rest assured, Homisuk-sama, we, the 5 great shinobi villages, will not break our promise. Zhuan Xiaochun this time gave an order to the Umbu guarding the door of the conference room. And not long after, 2 Umbu came to the conference room with a few boxes and respectfully placed them in front of Hyojin. 3 Generations Naruto said, "This is the commission and compensation prepared by the 5 great shinobi villages together, of which the commission is 200 million and the compensation is 100 million. I wonder if Homisuk-sama is satisfied?" As soon as he said that, the Kages looked at Hyojin. 300 million is indeed a huge amount of money, but when divided among the 4 shinobi villages, 300 million is nothing. Because the Mist Village is too poor to pay, and because they did not participate in pretending to be members of Amatsukami, they are not included. Therefore, this 300 million is actually negotiable, and the 5 great shinobi villages deliberately took out 300 million as a price that is both sincere and negotiable, is to take the opportunity to further negotiate with Amatsukami. After the last battle, they have confirmed that even if the 5 great shinobi villages work together, they are still unable to resist Amatsukami. So even if they have to spend money, they want to deepen the cooperation with Amatsukami to ensure the safety of the 5 great shinobi villages. Third update, please recommend votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1177. Looking at the boxes of money on the table, the corners of Hyojin's mouth rose slightly under the mask. As the 5th generation Naruto of Mai, he is well aware of what the 5 great shinobi villages are planning. But right now is the critical moment for him to break through the Kekii trap. So he is neither free nor in the mood to discuss the next step of cooperation with the 5 great shinobi villages. Because if this ceremony fails, he won't even be able to take care of himself, and the next step of cooperation will be in vain. And if the ceremony succeeds, he will smoothly become the 3rd Kekii trap in the shinobi world, and by that time, there will be no need to discuss this kind of cooperation, because at that time, he will quickly integrate the forces to wipe out the Akatsuki organization and establish a new set of rules for the shinobi world. Therefore, Hyojin didn't say any superfluous words and directly opened the Byakugan to check the money in the boxes. After confirming that there are no mistakes, he took out a storage scroll from his ninja bag and sealed the boxes of money into it. The cost of this ceremony is about 200 Rio. Now that 300 Rio is in front of him, he doesn't need to bargain at all. He could just take the money and leave. Therefore, in front of everyone's eyes, Kuroto put away the storage scroll and disappeared directly from the conference room, leaving the Kage and elders of the 5 great shinobi villages looking at each other in dismay. 4 generations of Kazekage was stunned. She left us like that. Tsunade immediately came back to her senses. Didn't we prepare? too much money? Considering that the leader of Amitsukami, Yama, personally took action this time, coupled with the fact that the 5 great shinobi villages pretended to be members of Amitsukami without permission, the 5 great shinobi villages prepared 300 Ryo at one time. Moreover, in the eyes of the Kages, 300 Ryo isn't much. On average, a village only pays 70 to 80 million Ryo, which is nothing for the 5 great shinobi villages, so the Kages were even prepared for Amitsukami to ask for too much. After all, according to their past dealings with Amitsukami, Amitsukami's appetite has always been very big. It's just that they didn't expect that Amitsukami didn't even bargain this time, and just took the money and left. 3 generations Naruto said solemnly, "We miscalculated." The 3 generations Tsuchikage nodded and said, "Well, we shouldn't have taken out the money directly. We can't even talk now." 4 generations Lei Ing suggested, "Should we follow her? If we give chase now, we should still be able to make it." Kakashi shook his head. The other party is too dangerous. Once a misunderstanding arises, the gains will not make up for the losses. Jiraiya agreed with Kakashi's judgment. "I'm afraid that none of us have the ability to follow Uchiha, who has such power. Not to mention the Manjikyu Uchiha. Even the 3 Magatama Sharingan Uchiha are all experts in anti-tracking. After all, Jutsu Kekkei Genkai is an expert in the field of anti-tracking. On the other hand, Homusubi can make people feel like they have fallen into a Jinjutsu even with his eyes closed. Once he opens his eyes, the consequences will be unimaginable. There's almost no chance of winning against such a Jinjutsu master. Everyone present is a high-level person who has managed a shinobi village. They have strong willpower and rich experience, so they quickly recovered from the shock of Homusubi leaving without saying goodbye and began to summarize the information they just collected. 3 generations Tsuchikage looked around at everyone and asked, "Do any of you know this Homusubi?" Everyone shook their heads. The appearance of Homusubi belongs to the type that people will never forget. As long as they have seen him before, they will definitely have an impression of him, even if they just glanced at him on the street. But no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't find the corresponding memory. Only Kakashi frowned and seemed to be thinking about something. Seeing this, Hyojin Shadow Clone asked curiously, "Kakashi, have you seen Homusubi?" Everyone in the meeting room immediately turned their eyes to Kakashi. Facing everyone's inquiring eyes, Kakashi shook his head and said, "I haven't seen him before." Indeed, he had never seen the Flame Devil before. However, for some reason, he felt that the appearance of the Flame Devil was somewhat familiar. It made him feel vaguely familiar. 3 generations Naruto asserted, "I can be sure that he is not the Uchiha who grew up in our Mai." Zhuan Xiao, Chun, Tsunade, and Jiraiya all nodded in agreement. Although the Uchiha clan in the village has produced many geniuses in recent decades, such as Fuyue, Jisue, Shinichi, and Sasuke, but for now, none of them could be compared with Homusubi. Therefore, if a genius like Homusubi was really born in the Uchiha clan, the Konoha village would have long been aware of the existence of the Uchiha clan, so it would be impossible for them not to know about it. 4 generations Laying said solemnly at this time, "There is something wrong with her age. Reikage and Hachibi's Jinchuriki once attacked Homusubi of Amitsukami's organization, Homusubi on the Bird Cry Cliff. At that time, they used the tail Beast Jade to sneak attack and successfully forced Homusubi to use the Golden Susanoo. But that was 8 or 9 years ago. Judging from the appearance of the Flame Demon when she took off her mask, it was obvious that she was only a 16 or 17-year-old girl. If that was the case, then the Flame Demon from 8 or 9 years ago was at most 9 years old. At the age of 9, she awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, stirred up a storm in the shinobi world, and easily got rid of the pursuit of the Kumo AB and Kumobikir at that time. This is obviously too sensational, Tsunade said. She should be more than 16 or 17 years old. I just vaguely saw a mark of the Een seal between her eyebrows from her hair. so her actual age may be older than it looks. Everyone looked at the Een seal mark on Tsunade's forehead and compared Tsunade's current appearance with her real age and immediately understood. Humph! Being looked at like this by everyone, Tsunade suddenly snorted lightly. Everyone hurriedly looked away in embarrassment. Only Mei, who was standing behind Yagura, didn't look away. She still stared at Tsunade and thought to herself, the Een seal actually has the effect of retaining one's appearance. This is too amazing. Tsunade then said, what we should pay attention to now is how she got the Een seal. This technique is our Mai's secret. Hyojin's shadow clone pondered for a moment and said, the Een seal is not only obtained in our Mai. The Uzumaki clan should also have it. After the destruction of the land of whirlpools, it is possible that Amitsukami obtained it. Tsunade, who originally suspected that there was a spy of Amitsukami in the village, after listening to Hyojin's words, she thought for a moment and felt that it seemed to make sense. Because with the destruction of the land of whirlpools, many of the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu of the Uzumaki clan were lost in the shinobi world. Because the leader of the Akatsuki organization, Nagato, was a member of the Uzumaki clan, so he mastered many of the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu of the Uzumaki clan. In the previous battle, when Sandaime Hokage used the Go Seal on him, he easily resolved it. If Akatsuki can do it, then Amitsukami can naturally do it as well. First, I'm asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1178. Hyojin didn't know that after he left, everyone in the meeting room was studying and analyzing him. But even if they knew, he didn't care. Anyway, this fire escape clone of his was cloned by himself. No one knew the root of it, so it was basically impossible to find clues through conventional methods. After leaving the Naruto building, he didn't stop and sneaked out of the village. After confirming that there was no one around in a secluded forest outside the village, he changed back to his Een escape body and sneaked back into the village. The next morning, he went to the Naruto building as usual after receiving the Shadow Clone's memories. Then, he went to a practice field in the village and found Guy who was teaching Naruto, Ningxi, and Shaoli. Teacher, seeing Hyojin coming over, Naruto and Ningxi quickly greeted him and bowed respectfully. Yes. Hyojin smiled and nodded. Through the Shadow Clone's memories, he knew that because Kakashi had been cultivating and Sasuke had been traveling, Naruto and Sakura had been following Ningxi's class and receiving Guy's guidance. It just so happened that Naruto, who had mastered the Nine Tails Chakra mode, had received an overall improvement in strength, speed, and perception. So, it was time to polish his physical skills. So, although the 2 months of physical skills training seemed very boring, the improvement in Naruto's strength was very significant. It could be said that it solidified Naruto's foundation in physical skills and laid a more solid foundation for his future development. And with Naruto's stimulation, Ningxi and Shaoli's training efficiency had also increased a lot. Just from her mental appearance, it could be seen that they didn't slack off in the past 2 months. It's just that compared to Naruto, their progress was somewhat insignificant. As far as Hyojin knew, Naruto could easily suppress Ningxi and Shaoli. If Naruto went all out, Ningxi and Shaoli would most likely be defeated in an instant. But that was to be expected. Naruto in the Nine Tails Chakra mode is a real Kaga-level powerhouse. Even Sasuke, with his Manjikyu Sharingan, is not his opponent, not to mention Ningxi and Shaoli. Actually, as long as they were not compared to Naruto or Sasuke, Ningxi and Shaoli were still very outstanding. The two of them, who are only 14 years old, now almost have the strength of a Tokubetsu Jonin. In the state of Hashimen Tanku, their strength can even be compared to the Shoulder Jonin. At this age, this is already a great achievement. After briefly asking about the progress of Naruto and Ningxi, Hyojin sent the two of them away. Then came the Guy, called Guy to the side, and explained his purpose of coming here. Guy was a little puzzled after listening. You're like this, Kakashi is also like this, what happened to the two of you? Why are you so anxious to practice Hashimen Tanku? Hyojin asked, did Kakashi also look for you? Guy nodded. Well, not long ago he asked me about the method to break through the 7th gate, Wonder Gate. Hyojin secretly thought. Kakashi is also breaking through the Wonder Gate. It seems that Obsidian's matter has stimulated him a lot. There is no doubt that with Kakashi's Nanatsutsuki bloodline physique, being able to complete the first 6 gates in such a short period of time, and the last gate before officially breaking through the Gate of Death, is enough to show that Obsidian's matter gave him the motivation to break through the Gate of Death. Seeing Hyojin was silent, Guy asked what happened. Hyojin smiled. Don't worry, it's not a big deal. The identity of Obsidian is still in a state of secrecy. The village does not want to disclose the fact that the masked man in the Akatsuki organization was once a Mai ninja, so even Guy is kept in the dark. Hyojin is different from Kakashi. He is breaking through the Wonder Gate for the upcoming Kekkei Genkai ceremony, so there's no need to tell Guy. Soon, the two came to another practice field. Guy said in the field, I don't know how to do it. It's better for me to show you directly. You have the Byakugan, and you've already cultivated to the 6th gate of view. You should be able to understand at a glance. Okay. Hyojin took 2 steps back and activated the Byakugan. Boom! With the surge of air, Guy immediately activated the 8 inner hidden gates and opened the seal one by one, from the 1st gate open gate to the 7th gate, Wonder Gate. Hyojin's eyes were cold. Guy's speed of opening the gate was fast and smooth. Even the 7th gate, Wonder Gate, was opened in an instant, almost without any obstacles. At the same time, he found that the flow of chakra in Guy's body did not change much. From the opening of the 1st gate to the end of the 7th gate, the flow of chakra was normal and direct, which is also in line with the characteristics of the 8 inner hidden gates Iron Fist style. Hey, is there really no hidden skills? Then why can't I open the Wonder Gate? In an instant, Hyojin's heart was full of doubts. Before long, Guy dispelled the 8 inner hidden gates. After all, even he found it difficult to maintain the state of opening 7 gates for a long period of time. And this was because he was standing motionless and hadn't launched any attacks. Otherwise, if he really did open all 7 gates in battle, his body would inevitably fall into a state of extreme weakness, and he might even suffer serious injuries. After taking a breath, Guy asked, Mirror, do you understand? Hyojin frowned. The state of you opening the Wonder Gate is almost exactly the same as described on the secret technique scroll, but I can't open the Wonder Gate according to the description on the scroll. Guy wondered, how can this be? Hyojin analyzed, and the chakra's amount when I tried was no less than yours just now. You can open the Wonder Gate. It stands to reason that I should be able to open it too. Guy thought for a moment and said, Kakashi's situation seems to be the same as yours. Oh. After a pause, Hyojin asked, then what did he think? Guy replied, he seriously analyzed it for a long time, and then he told me that there might be a problem with his mentality. He was too impatient. Mentality? Hyojin was stunned for a moment, and then he immediately came to a realization. He had always known that when cultivating the 8 inner hidden gates, the mentality was very important, but because the previous cultivation had been very smooth, he had gradually neglected this point. Now that Guy reminded him, he immediately understood what the crux of the problem was. If Kakasika was stuck at the Gate of Wonder because he was too impatient, then he was stuck at the Gate of Wonder because he was too utilitarian when trying to break through the Gate of Wonder. He completely treated the 8 inner hidden gates as a part of the ritual, and his heart lacked the determination to forge ahead. So every time he was at the last step, he would fail on the verge of success. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1179. I should have thought of it a long time ago. Kai, his father, and the future Shaoli are not ninjas who focus on techniques. In terms of subtle control of chakra, they're not even comparable to many ordinary ninjas. However, they can all cultivate the 8 inner hidden gates to the peak, which means that the 8 inner hidden gates doesn't need such delicate techniques. What it really needs is hard practice day after day and the determination to move forward. Hyojin, who understood the crux of the problem, suddenly came to a realization. In truth, he had always known these truths. It was just that his previous success had caused him to be a bit impetuous and restless. He hadn't been able to calm his heart and carefully analyze the situation. Instead, he had shifted his habits of scientific research onto the 8 inner hidden gates. However, the 8 inner hidden gates was the profound meaning of the Iron Fist style, so it didn't need too many twists and turns. One had to know that Dai and Metke, the father and son who had cultivated the 8 inner hidden gates to the highest realm, were at the bottom of the line even when using ordinary ninjutsu. As their successor, Xiaoli was even more of a ninjutsu idiot. However, this didn't prevent them from cultivating the 8 inner hidden gates, so from this point alone, it could be seen that the 8 inner hidden gates didn't focus on techniques, but on confidence, perseverance, and even determination. I didn't expect that I would make such a low-level mistake. Shaking his head, Hyojin secretly reflected on himself. He had corrected Ningxi more than once because of this, but when it really fell on him, he made almost the same mistake as Ningxi. Then he sighed softly and said, "Is it because the ceremony is approaching?" During the reflection, he found that he was indeed a little impetuous during this period of time, and he lacked some of the calmness of the past. And this was probably because the ceremony was approaching. After all, for this ceremony that led to the peak, he had painstakingly planned and prepared for 13 or 14 years. Now that the preparations were about to be completed, even with his temperament, it was inevitable that he would feel uneasy. And these emotions of impetuousness and eagerness for quick success, when he thought about it carefully, were actually caused by this anxiety. In the end, I'm still afraid of failure. Hyojin knew that the more he desired success, the more afraid he was of failure. He also realized that he was not as calm as he seemed on the surface. He had been trying his best to hide it and did not want to show his worry about failure. After staring blankly for a long time, Hyojin smiled at Guy and said, "Guy, I really have to thank you this time." Huh? Guy paused for a moment and said, "I don't think I helped much." Patting Guy's shoulder, Hyojin said in a deep voice, "No, you have done me a great favor." Guy's expression was a little strange. That's what Kakashi said before. "What happened to you guys?" Hyojin smiled and did not say much. Then, he left in a flash and rushed to his secret training ground in the backyard of the ninja school. After activating the surrounding enchantment, Hyojin, who was standing in the field, looked at the sky with clear eyes. It's not a shameful thing to be afraid. The ladder to the peak is not so easy to climb. Trying to hide your fear will only interfere with your judgment and make you ignore the real danger. Only by facing your own weakness can your mind be clear enough. After exhaling softly, Hyojin withdrew his gaze from a distance. Then one by one, he put away his complicated thoughts and completely emptied his mind. He forgot about the utilitarian desire to break through the gate of wonder, forgot about the previous failure, and even forgot about the ritual that had been entrenched in his heart. He wholeheartedly threw himself into the cultivation of the 8 inner hidden gates. Bang, bang, bang. Soon, there were bursts of muffled sounds that seemed to be knocking on the soul in the training field, accompanied by the whistling of the wind. On the other side of the training field, Naruto, who was fighting with Ningxi and Xiaoli, suddenly turned his head and looked into the distance. Ningxi and Xiaoli immediately stopped and asked, "What's wrong?" As soon as they finished speaking, they saw a figure slowly walking in the direction that Naruto was looking at. When they took a closer look, they were surprised to find that the person was actually Sasuke, who had been traveling for more than 2 months without saying a word. At this time, Sakura also noticed Sasuke walking over and immediately greeted him excitedly. "Sasuke, you're finally back. Do you know how worried everyone was about you? Why didn't you tell us that you were traveling? We're teammates in the same class." Naruto and the others also gathered in the field. When they got closer, they realized that Sasuke had changed drastically compared to 2 months ago. Whether it was the feeling that chakra gave people or his temperament, they were all very different from before. The current Sasuke and chakra gave people a very cold feeling. This made Sasuke, who liked to pretend to be cool, now look very cold even if he did not deliberately pretend. His whole body exuded a cold and sharp temperament. In addition, they also noticed that Sasuke's dressing was different from before. In the past, although Sasuke was also very particular about his dressing, it was only at the level of a rich family son. Now, Sasuke wore gloves on his hands and boots on his feet. His body was almost wrapped in clothes, and there was a long sword on his waist. He looked very mysterious. Sasuke glanced at them, and finally his eyes fell on Naruto. Naruto met Sasuke's gaze and asked, "Sasuke, where have you been traveling in the past 2 months?" Sasuke did not answer Naruto's question. Instead, he asked, "Where's teacher Kakashi?" Naruto scratched his head. "Maybe in a training field in the village. After you left, Kakashi-sensei has been cultivating alone. I'm not too sure where he is right now." Sakura thought about it and hurriedly replied, "I heard from Madame Tsunade that teacher Kakashi is going to have my transplant today, so he should be in the hospital now." Sasuke nodded slightly, then turned and walked toward my hospital. Ningxi asked, "Sasuke, aren't you going to train with us?" Sasuke looked back at Ningxi, then shifted his gaze to Naruto, who was beside him, and said, "No." After saying that, without waiting for Ningxi and Naruto to say anything, he directly activated the body flicker technique and disappeared in front of everyone. Tion pulled Sakura and whispered, "Sakura, Sasuke seems to have become more handsome." Sakura looked at the place where Sasuke disappeared with a love-struck expression and nodded repeatedly. Xiaoli asked doubtfully, "Do you feel that Sasuke has changed?" Naruto said, "Yes, his chakra has become much stronger." Sigh. Ningxi, on the other hand, sighed softly. Compared to the simple Naruto and Xiaoli, the sensitive him could clearly feel the alienation from Sasuke, as well as Sasuke's contempt for him. The Sasuke who treated him as a formidable opponent back then was no longer around. Now, Naruto was probably the only formidable opponent in Sasuke's eyes. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1180. My hospital. After preparing all the surgical instruments, Tsunade said to Kakashi, who was lying on the operating table, "This is just a small operation. You don't have to be too nervous." Kakashi nodded. With the reconciliation between the Naruto clan and the Uchiha clan, the two sides have slowly begun to cooperate. Previously, the transplant of Fuyue Sharingan was done by Tsunade herself. And in order to thank Tsunade, Fuyue, who knew that Kakashi was seeking to restore his left eye, represented the Uchiha clan and presented Kakashi with a 3 Magatama Sharingan. This is also the origin of today's transplant operation. Originally, Tsunade was planning to cultivate a left eye and transplant it for Kakashi, but an ordinary eye is obviously not comparable to the 3 Magatama Sharingan. And Kakashi, who has become accustomed to the Manjikyu Sharingan, the burden of a 3 Magatama Sharingan is nothing at all, so there's no need to think about it. Kakashi accepted the kindness of the Uchiha clan, because he knows very well that the lack of an eye is too great a restriction on his strength. Currently, his main means of attack are the Lightning God Technique, Flying Thunder God Technique, and Hashiman Inner Hidden Gates, and all of these require superb insight in order to display their true power. Therefore, for him, the 3 Tomo Sharingan is a treasure that can enhance his strength by a large margin in an instant. And in order to stop his best friend Obsidian, he must have stronger strength, because he has a hunch that the next time they meet, I am afraid it will be a real decisive battle. After a while, Tsunade said, "Okay, the operation is completed." As expected, the operation went very smoothly. After the development of medical ninjutsu, the transplant operation has become very simple. Noara Rin was able to successfully transplant the Sharingan to Kakashi in such a harsh environment on the battlefield, let alone Tsunade, who is now standing at the peak of medical ninjutsu. Kakashi sat up from the operating table and began to adapt to the newly obtained Sharingan. Tsunade, who was on the side, said while sorting out the surgical instruments, "This is not the first time you have received an eye transplant, so I won't say much nonsense about the things you need to pay attention to, but you have to remember, even if you have a long period of experience adapting to the Sharingan, you still have to be vigilant when using it." Kakashi nodded and said, I understand. After pondering for a while, Tsunade said again, You are not a member of the Uchiha clan, nor do you have the physique of the Senju clan, so it will be difficult for you to exert the full power of the Sharingan. So, I suggest that you try to practice Yin Seal. Kakashi was surprised. What? Practice the Yin Seal? Tsunade glanced at Kakashi. Why? Didn't Kuroto mention it to you? Kakashi shook his head. Kuroto really kept his mouth shut according to my request. This is a bit beyond my expectations. After a chuckle, Tsunade explained, Kuroto improved the Yin Seal and created a version that can also be practiced by male ninjas. You could try to practice that version of the Yin Seal. Kakashi asked, Is it useful? Tsunade pointed to herself and said, You don't need to doubt this point. Yin Seal can improve the physique of the practitioner. It is not as simple as storing chakra. Kuroto, and Homusubi of Amatsukami have all practiced Yin Seal, and you should be clear about its effects. Kakashi thought for a while, then nodded. Now, as long as he can improve his strength, he is willing to try anything, because he doesn't want to experience the feeling of powerlessness of being unable to stop or change anything. As soon as he walked out of the gate of my hospital, Kakashi met Sasuke, who was looking for him. Last night, Kakashi knew that Sasuke had returned to the village, so he wasn't too surprised. He just looked at Sasuke carefully and said casually, You're back. Sasuke glanced at the blindfold on Kakashi's left eye and said, Kakashi-sensei, I want to challenge you. After returning to the village, Sasuke thought about it all night and finally decided to start with Kakashi. He knows the strength of Naruto, and he knows that Naruto didn't use his full strength in the previous few battles. So even if he has the eternal Manjiki Sharingan, he doesn't have the confidence to completely defeat Naruto. Kakashi was a little surprised and said with a smile, It just so happens that I also want to find someone to test the effect of the newly transplanted Sharingan. Transplanted Sharingan? Sasuke frowned slightly. He knew that Kakashi will transplant an eye today, and just now he also sensed a chakra fluctuation under Kakashi's left eye, but he didn't expect Kakashi to transplant the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. Kakashi explained, Well, it's a 3 Magatama Sharingan that your father gave me. Hearing that it was a gift from his father, Sasuke no longer hesitated and said, Let's go. After a while, the two of them arrived at a remote training ground. Kakashi lifted the blindfold, revealing the scarlet 3 Magatama Sharingan inside, and said, Sasuke, I can feel that the chakra in your body has become a lot stronger. It seems that you have grown a lot during this trip. Sasuke held the hilt of the sword at his waist with one hand and said lightly, Kakashi-sensei, you'd better go all out, otherwise you may lose very miserably. Listening to Sasuke's confident words, Kakashi was startled for a moment, and then immediately scolded with a smile, You little devil. Before he finished his sentence, he disappeared on the spot with a swoosh. Then, countless sharp sounds that sounded like the cries of thousands of birds reverberated in the air above the training field. The corner of Sasuke's mouth twitched, and his figure also disappeared in place. In a blink of an eye, the entire practice field was filled with countless afterimages and constantly flashing electric arcs, accompanied by the sound of metal colliding from time to time and the whistling sound of wind breaking. Kakashi and Sasuke are undoubtedly the same type of ninja, born with extraordinary talent, and can naturally combine taijutsu and ninjutsu together to display smooth and fierce attacks. Since they are both master and disciple, and also geniuses, they directly skipped the process of testing each other and started to fight seriously from the beginning. After fighting for a while, Kakashi was secretly shocked. He knew that Sasuke was very strong, but he never expected that after a trip, Sasuke would be strong to this extent. Even without using the Manjiki Sharingan, he could resist his attack. Similarly, Sasuke was also greatly surprised. He thought that with his current strength, even without the Manjiki Sharingan, he should be able to defeat a ninja of Kakashi's level. But after the fight, he found that Kakashi was far more difficult to deal with than he thought, and he was very clear that Kakashi still had a lot of tricks up his sleeves that he hasn't used yet. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, Thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1181. I didn't expect Kakashi-sensei to be so tricky. It seems that ordinary ninjutsu won't work. Do I have to use the kaleidoscope pupil technique? As soon as he had this idea, Sasuke shook his head and dispelled it. This was not because he cherished the pupil power, but because Kakashi was only the first target he wanted to challenge. It was just a warm-up before the main show. Next, he had to challenge Shinichi, Jishuei, and his brother Itachi, who he had never defeated before. Then he would crush Naruto head-on with a complete victory and reconfirm his undisputed first place in the same batch. Finally, Sensei, I must make her look at me seriously. After the figure of Uchiha Flames flashed in his mind, Sasuke's eyes suddenly became firm. In his opinion, if he needed to use the kaleidoscope pupil technique to deal with Kakashi-sensei, then he was not qualified to challenge those who he thought were stronger. Kakashi obviously didn't know that Sasuke had defined him as a warm-up level. At this time, he glanced at the kunai and shuriken scattered on the training ground with a slightly dignified expression. Because these kunai and shuriken were all broken without exception. Moving his gaze to the long sword in Sasuke's hand, Kakashi said, "What a sharp sword. If I don't inject chakra, I'm afraid my kunai won't even be able to resist one sword." There was no doubt that the broken kunai and shuriken on the ground were all caused by the short confrontation just now, and the culprit was the long sword in Sasuke's hand. The kunai and shuriken forged from fine steel were like ordinary wood in front of that long sword. They were completely broken with a single cut and shattered with a touch. Only by infusing it with chakra could one barely resist it, just like the kunai in Kakashi's hand that was full of nicks. But ordinary kunai were not forged from chakra metal, and the conduction of chakra was very costly, so forcibly infusing kunai with chakra was a very stupid act. What did Sasuke experience in the past 2 months? Also, what's with that long sword of his? Why is it so sharp? For a moment, many doubts surged in Kakashi's mind, making him reflect on his lack of concern for Sasuke during this period of time. After a brief confrontation, both of them silently launched their attacks again. This time, Sasuke changed his tactics. He gave up the idea of using taijutsu to directly defeat Kakashi. Instead, he shot many shurikens from his ninja bag, and through the steel wires wrapped around the shurikens, he laid a series of irregular steel wire locks on the practice field, and then launched a fierce attack with the Zaiden. Obviously, he wanted to use the super insight of his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to force Kakashi to reveal flaws in the complex combat environment, and then defeat Kakashi in one fell swoop. Sasuke's plan naturally can't be hidden from Kakashi. However, Kakashi has just transplanted a Samagatama Sharingan, and he also wants to try the effect of this new Sharingan. So he took the initiative to throw himself into the steel wire array and compete with Sasuke in subtle skills. Thus, the two of them moved around in the practice field that was filled with steel wires, engaging in a delicate and dangerous confrontation. Because in this steel wire array, a little carelessness may cause the body to be cut by the steel wire, and if the collision is too fierce, it may even be directly cut off by the sharp steel wire. Therefore, in this special field, once you make a mistake, you will be injured, seriously injured, and if you're unlucky, it is very likely that you will die directly. But whether it is Kakashi or Sasuke, both are rare geniuses. One has rich experience, and the other has excellent insight, so fighting in this dangerous environment can stimulate their fighting spirit. Clang, 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 the harsh sound of metal colliding rose one after another in the practice field. The two fleeting figures of Kakashi and Sasuke also fought back and forth in the steel wire array, accompanied by the flames caused by the violent collision of metal and the flashing electric arcs. At this moment, Sasuke suddenly switched the Kusanagi in his hand to his left hand, and then his right hand suddenly stretched forward. In an instant, a large amount of purple lightning spewed out from the palm of Sasuke's right hand. This attack was deliberately arranged by Sasuke. Through the fight just now, he deliberately lured Kakashi to a special area in the steel wire array, where there is an inconspicuous steel wire connected to all the steel wires around it. As long as the purple lightning hit that steel wire, the purple lightning would be able to travel through the conduction between the steel wires in an instant. In order to conceal this trap, the other areas of the steel wire array were not connected. Previously, he had used purple lightning to hit the steel wire, deliberately proving it to Kakashi, so that Kakashi would ignore the conduction effect of purple lightning on the steel wire array. Zap zap, as the electric current surged, a dazzling purple light immediately enveloped the entire practice field, and it enveloped Kakashi from all directions. Got it. The corner of Sasuke's mouth curled up slightly. Zap. But just as the electric current was about to converge on Kakashi, Kakashi's figure suddenly disappeared. Sasuke's expression turned cold, and he said in surprise, "Flying Thunder God technique? No, I've been monitoring him. He didn't have a chance to set up a positioning technique in the practice field at all. Could it be that he flew to another place?" As soon as he thought of this, Sasuke suddenly felt a surge of air behind him, so he subconsciously turned around and slashed with his sword. Swish, the Kusanagi sword cut through the air, but there was nothing. At this time, the ground under Sasuke's feet suddenly cracked, and a figure shining with purple light sprang out from the ground, attacking Sasuke fiercely. Caught off guard, the three Tomo Sharingan in Sasuke's eye sockets suddenly changed into the pattern of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and then a purple shadow was projected from his body, covering his body. There was no doubt that at this critical moment, Sasuke was forced to use the Manjikyu pupil technique Susanoo. Boom! Kakashi's purple electric thousand birds hit Sasuke's Susanoo with a loud roar, and the Susanoo, which was in a skeleton state, was pushed back again and again. As the huge Susanoo was repelled, the steel wire array all over the practice field was also broken by the Susanoo. Soon, the smoke dissipated, revealing a messy practice field. Glancing at the steel wire that was broken by his Susanoo, Sasuke's face became gloomy, and then he removed the Susanoo, closed the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and said to Kakashi, "I lost this time." After that, Sasuke left without looking back. Kakashi, who was ready to continue, was confused. What does this kid mean? At the same time, he also keenly noticed that the pattern of the Manjikyu Sharingan in Sasuke's eye sockets seemed to be different from before. The first update is here. Please recommend it on Monday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1182. Although he once had a Manjikyu Sharingan, Kakashi was not a real Uchiha clan member after all. His understanding of Sharingan is mainly limited to the use of it. Therefore, although he found that the pattern on Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan has changed slightly, he couldn't analyze the reason for it. That kid was obviously full of fighting spirit. Just now, why did he suddenly lose interest? Pausing for a moment, Kakashi once again thought of something and muttered, "Did that kid think that he would lose just because he used the Manjikyu Sharingan?" The more he analyzed, the more Kakashi felt that this was the case. Does that brat think that he can easily defeat me without using the Manjikyu Sharingan? I'm also the representative of Naruto. How can I be looked down upon like this? Immediately, Kakashi smiled bitterly. In fact, he had long felt that Sasuke didn't respect him too much, but he didn't expect that Sasuke would look down on him so much, which made him angry and funny at the same time. But soon he adjusted his mood. Hey, how can I be looked down upon by a kid like this? With Kakashi's experience, he naturally wouldn't care about a kid like Sasuke, but Sasuke's attitude towards him still aroused his long-dormant competitive spirit. Not to mention the fact that his friend Obito is stronger than Sasuke, and both of them are from the Uchiha clan and possess Manjikyu Sharingan. So Sasuke is a very good opponent for Kuroto. Therefore, Kuroto decided that the next time he fights with Sasuke, he will treat Sasuke with the same seriousness that he would treat Obito with. On the other side, after leaving the practice field, Sasuke's face was gloomy as he sheathed his sword and thought about the fight just now. The one who fought with me just now was just a shadow clone? Then when did his real body hide in the ground? Could it be the detonation talisman at the beginning of the fight? After a little thought, Sasuke analyzed Kakashi's tactics. Obviously, at the beginning of the match, Kakashi had already used the smoke and dust from the explosion of the detonation talisman as a cover to quietly cast Shadow Doppelganger. So in a subsequent series of battles, Sasuke only faced one of Kakashi's Shadow Doppelganger. Because of this, Kakashi's real body had the opportunity to quietly set up the Flying Thunder God technique in the practice field. Because Kakashi's shadow clone wasn't strong enough, when it used the Flying Thunder God technique to travel through space, it was annihilated in the process. Therefore, it only created a turbulent flow of air behind Sasuke, and it couldn't directly travel to Sasuke's back. Sasuke slashed out with his sword, but naturally he slashed empty air, while his shatter, Jito Kakashi, who was hiding in the ground, keenly grasped it. Damn, I was so easily forced to use Susanoo by Kakashi-sensei, what a failure. After understanding the cause and effect, Sasuke's face became more and more gloomy, because he realized that his thunder release was taught by Kakashi, and his ninjutsu throwing and the use of Sharingan were taught by his brother Itachi, Jishuei, and Shinichi. It is undoubtedly very difficult to use what the other party taught to defeat the other party. I must develop something that belongs to me in order to win by surprise. Thinking of this, Sasuke's mind moved, and the figure of Uchiha's flame surrounded by purple flames flashed in his mind, and suddenly an idea came to him. Flame release. For the current Sasuke, developing ordinary ninjutsu is no longer meaningful. What he needs is Kekkei limit, or even Kekkei elimination level of powerful ninjutsu. And flame release obviously meets this requirement. This is not a whim of Sasuke. He is very clear that his talent in ninjutsu is far higher than jinjutsu. He is a typical ninjutsu Uchiha. So instead of crawling in a field that he is not good at, it is better to focus on the field that he is good at. In addition, his Manjikyu Sharingan technique, Amaterasu, and Earth Life are both related to ninjutsu. Especially the Earth Life, that can control the flame form, is a sharp weapon for him to develop flame release. It can be said that this Manjikyu Sharingan technique was born for the development of flame release. So for him who has Earth Life, the difficulty of developing flame release is far less than other ninjas. Sasuke secretly made up his mind. In the next competition, I must defeat Kakashi-sensei. There are still many strong people waiting for me to challenge one by one. How can I waste too much time on Kakashi-sensei? Time passed day by day like this. In these days, while storing chakra in the Yin seal on his forehead, Hyojin concentrated on practicing Hashimen Tanku, and as he figured out the problem, the practice of Hashimen Tanku quickly achieved results. It only took about half a month for him to successfully open the 7th gate, Shock Gate, early in the morning. And with the opening of the Shock Gate, the final 8th gate, Death Gate, finally entered his field of vision. The 8th gate, Death Gate, is located in the heart of the human body. It is a real vital point. Once this gate is opened, because of the huge amount of chakra accumulated in the first 7 gates, it will cause irreversible damage to the fragile heart of the human body. So as long as this gate is opened, even if you don't attack and just stand still, your heart will eventually be crushed by the surging chakra, and you will die. So under normal circumstances, the Death Gate is just like its name. Opening it means death. In addition, Hyojin also estimated the chakra amount of the 7th gate, Shock Gate. If the Shock Gate is opened, the chakra amount will soar to 10 times the original. Then after opening the Death Gate, the surge of chakra amount is likely to double the foundation of the Shock Gate, reaching 20 times the original chakra amount in an instant. In other words, after opening the Death Gate, the rumor that one can instantly obtain more than 10 times the strength of the 5 Kage is not false. For example, Guy's father, Matt Dai, was just a low-level genin who was ostracized by his colleagues and looked down upon by the villagers. But once he opened the Death Gate, he almost eliminated the mist shinobi swordsman from the shinobi world in one battle, causing this infamous mist shinobi group to be silent for decades without being able to recover. And if Guy, who was stronger, opened the Death Gate, even a 6-path powerhouse could be killed with a single kick. Hyojin's current strength was already very strong. If he opened the Death Gate, On top of that, the effect of the increase might not be as exaggerated as Guy's. After all, every technique has an upper limit, but it would definitely allow his chakra amount to reach an unimaginable limit in an instant, and that would be the best time for him to break through the bloodline net. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1183. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Feeling the pulse of his heart, Hyojin gradually emptied his mind. When the seventh gate of wonder was opened, he had a very wonderful feeling. It was a feeling that he had never felt before. It was as if he had full control of his body at this moment. I can feel the pulse of my heart. I can feel the blood flowing in my veins. I can feel the transmission of my nerves. I can feel the movement of my stomach. This feeling was like opening a new window, allowing him to re-understand his body from another angle that he had never tried before. After a long time, he sighed softly. No wonder. He had always been a little puzzled. How could Guy, who clearly did not have pupillary Kekii Genkai, be no worse than those pupillary Kekii Genkai ninjas in physical skills? He could even develop the strange ability to predict the enemy's movements by observing their legs. But when he opened the Gate of Wonder, all these questions were easily answered. The Gate of Wonder was like a shackle that shackled the body. Once it was opened, the whole body seemed to come alive. In the face of an unexpected situation, there was no need for the eyes to see, the brain to convey, and the body could respond appropriately. The iron fist is ahead of the soft fist. Even if Hyojin was a Hyuga, he had to admit this at this moment. Not to mention 80 Gods of Empty Fist. Although the principle of 80 Gods of Empty Fist is similar to the soft fist of the Hyuga clan, both are advanced applications of chakra and taijutsu, but 80 Gods of Empty Fist obviously cannot be simply included in the category of soft fist. Even if the 80 God Vacuo Strikes was categorized as a soft fist, it wasn't the technique that was strong, but the fact that Otsutsuki Kagaya had an almost inexhaustible supply of chakra, which was the Kekii net. In terms of true versatility, the Iron Fist with the 8 inner hidden gates was undoubtedly better than the old-fashioned soft fist. No wonder Kakashi, as the 6th generation in the original Space and Time, had specially trained a team of 8 inner hidden gates. The 8 inner hidden gates was indeed a secret skill with a high upper limit and great potential. As long as one was willing to put in the effort, even if they could only open the 3rd gate, their strength would still significantly increase. Moreover, the requirements for talent aren't as harsh as practicing space-time ninjutsu. As long as you look carefully, you can always find some ninjas suitable for practicing the 8 inner hidden gates. Putting away his thoughts, Hyojin took advantage of the opening of the Gate of Wonder to comprehend the last gate, the Gate of Death. He did not know why, but he had a feeling that as long as he was resolute enough, he would be able to open the door of death, even if he had just opened the 7th door of terror. In other words, the opening of the Gate of Death was easier than the Gate of Alarm. To be more precise, the price of opening the Gate of Death was death after opening the Gate of Death. After that, Hyojin jumped on the edge of knocking open the Gate of Death. Half of it was based on his experience, and the other half was based on his experience. He estimated the effects of opening the Gate of Death. The conclusion was the same as before. The moment he opened the Gate of Death, his chakra might skyrocket to about 20 times its normal state. However, this explosive state was very short, so short that it only lasted for a few dozen breaths. It was just enough for Guy to barely use the 2 sets of moves after opening the Gate of Death. Phew! After letting out a long sigh, Hyojin removed the state of the 8 inner hidden gates. At this time, he could proudly announce that he had conquered the 8 inner hidden gates and mastered all the mysteries of the 8 inner hidden gates. And as he gained a deeper understanding and complete control of the 8 inner hidden gates, he also realized that the 8 inner hidden gates, like other techniques, also had certain limitations. This limitation was not the technique itself, but the fragile human body. As long as the ninja's life level, body structure, and so on did not undergo a qualitative change, then the power of the 8 inner hidden gates would have a theoretical upper limit, and this upper limit was almost the 6th-path level. Simply put, even if a Jinin and Chunin could open the gate of death, the power that they could erupt with wasn't as terrifying as one might imagine. That was a good example. Although he killed 4 of the 7 swordsmen of the Mist Village in one battle, and almost eliminated the 7 swordsmen of the Mist Village in one battle. But this battle obviously didn't reach the description of 10 times the power of the 5 Kage. Because the 7 swordsmen of the Mist Village are only 7 elite Jonin, and they are more reliant on their ninjutsu, and they belong to the type of elite Jonin. Therefore, Mat Dajin, who has opened the gate of death, has obtained 10 times the power of the 5 Kage. Even if it is only for a short moment, none of the 7 will be able to survive, and none will be able to escape. Therefore, only a Jonin who reached the rank of Jonin and opened the gate of death could the potential of the 8 inner hidden gates be fully displayed. In other words, at least reaching the strength of a Jonin, it was possible to display the theoretical limit of the output of the 8 inner hidden gates and obtain 10 times the power of the 5 Kage in an instant. According to Hyojin's speculation, Guy's basic strength had reached the level of a Jonin, and after opening the gate of death, his chakra would probably increase by 100 times or even more. This would allow Guy, who was at the rank of Jonin, to cross the vague boundaries of the Kage and Super Kage levels and instantly obtain the terrifying power of the 6th-path level. If one's strength was higher, such as reaching the Kage level, the effect of opening the gate of death would not be as significant as that of a Jonin. Because the essence of the 8 inner hidden gates was to break the shackles of the human body and push the potential of the body to the peak in an instant. At the cost of burning one's life, attacking the organs, meridians, and bones, one could display the full power of the body. As for the Kage level experts, they more or less knew some techniques to develop the body's potential. For example, the previous generations of Liang, their development of the body's potential was not much worse than the ninjas who practiced the 8 inner hidden gates. Therefore, the 8 inner hidden gates, which was a technique that released all the body's potential, did not have such an exaggerated effect on them. If a Jonin who did not explore the limit of the body's potential, after opening the gate of death, his chakra amount would skyrocket by 100 times. Then for the Kage level experts who had used other methods to explore part of the body's potential, after opening the gate of death, their chakra amount might only increase by 50 times from the Kage level to the 6th-path level. For the Super Kage level experts like Hyojin, who had explored their potential very deeply, the limit of the potential that they could explore was not much. Therefore, after opening the gate of death, their chakra amount might only increase by 20 times, and they would be able to reach the 6th-path level more smoothly than others. In short, as long as there was no fundamental change in the level of life, although there was a difference in the upper limit of the human body's potential, the limit would be the 6th-path level. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1184. After conquering the 8 inner hidden gates, Hyojin had almost finished preparing for the ceremony. So in order to calm down and relieve the accumulated pressure, he prepared a sumptuous meal and then called his 2 disciples, Naruto and Ningxi, as well as Zin, who could only rely on him and Mai, to his home. Unexpectedly, Naruto also called Sakura and Sasuke. Ningxi brought Xiaoli and Tian, and Ziyuan called Yakumo and Sakai, who were in the same team. Thinking that it was already like this, Hyojin simply called Hinata's and Shikamaru's classes over. So, Mai's 12 roaches, now Mai's 15 roaches gathered in Hyojin's home, and their instructor Jonin also heard the news and came to join the fun. Looking at the big house full of guests, Hyojin's mouth twitched, and he said, "What is this? Eating from the rich." You put her hand on her forehead. "Oh no, I didn't expect so many guests to come. The food and drinks prepared are not enough." Hyojin said helplessly, "Let Gale and the others go to the restaurant to buy some ingredients." You glanced at Hyojin and asked in a low voice, "Then, how much?" Hyojin waved his hand. "Let these guys eat enough. It's just a meal, can't I? the great Naruto afford it? How can I lose face like this? Yes, yes. You nodded. Unlike Hyojin and you who hid in the kitchen and discussed in a low voice to buy ingredients. The living room at the moment was unusually lively. Since graduating from the ninja school, Naruto's classmates rarely got together. So this time Naruto's dinner was a rare opportunity for them. Naturally, everyone was full of conversation. Just like the students who graduated from the same year, the several mentors haven't had a meal together for a long time. Kakashi, Kai, Asuma, Red, and Mute formed their own little circle, drinking and talking about the situation of their respective classes. Glancing at the elated Naruto and Sasuke, who was pretending to be cool, Asuma smiled at Kakashi and said, "It must be a lot of pressure to guide these two kids, right?" Kakashi sighed. "They are indeed troublesome fellows." Red smiled. "Be content. With such an outstanding disciple, what else can you be dissatisfied with?" Mute echoed. "Yes, now Naruto and Sasuke have become famous in the village. In terms of strength, I'm afraid they are no less than us Jonin." Sasuke's fame in the village came from his sneak attack on the leader of the Akatsuki organization, Nagato, during the last war. Although the sneak attack didn't succeed, but a 13 or 14-year-old boy dared to attack a strong enemy that even the 5 Kage couldn't defeat. This in itself is commendable. And Naruto became famous because he defeated Sasuke. Kai, who has been teaching Naruto in place of Kakashi these days, said seriously, "Their future achievements will be above us." Kakashi gently nodded. "Well, they're the future of the village." At this time, Asuma said to Kai, "Your subordinates Ningxi and Xiaoli are also not bad." Kai shook his head slightly and lowered his voice. "Ningxi is definitely a genius, but it's a pity that Naruto and Sasuke are too dazzling, so his light is completely overshadowed. As for Xiaoli, that child is like me, a little stupid, but as long as he is willing to work hard, he will definitely become an indomitable ninja in the future." Red sighed softly. "Hinata, yeah, and Shino are actually very good, but it's a pity that there are too many monsters in their generation." Mute focused on eating and didn't interrupt. Her subordinates, Zen, Yakumo, and Sajui, also have great potential, especially Ziyuin and Yakumo. Their potential is so terrible that even she, as a Jonin, is secretly speechless. But at the same time, these two also have very obvious flaws. Ziyuin is obviously spoiled by Bell, and she is the real Miko of the Land of Demons, the actual leader of the Land of Demons. Yakumo, because of her weak physique, although she awakened the Kurama family's Kekkei limit, her performance is not stable, and she can't fight for a long time. As a ninja, her advantages and disadvantages are too prominent. Asuma continued Red's words and said with a smile, "In fact, there are also a lot of monsters in our generation. Don't forget, Kuroto has already become Naruto, and Kakashi is now Naruto's agent." Kai nodded, "Yeah." After listening to Asuma's words, Kakashi thought of Obsidian again, and his expression suddenly became a bit gloomy. Speaking of monsters, Obsidian, who used the Akatsuki to stir up trouble, can obviously be counted as a monster in their generation. In terms of strength, in his opinion, Obsidian is undoubtedly the strongest monster in their generation, stronger than him, the so-called genius, and Hyojin, who became the 5th Naruto. If I was the one who died, the shinobi world might be more stable than it is now, and Lin might be able to survive. Sometimes he even thought that if Obsidian didn't go astray, or if he was the one who died in the Battle of the Kamubi Bridge, then Sensei 4 generations Naruto might not have died, and the catastrophe that the village suffered after that might have been avoided. At this time, Hyojin and you brought the expensive ingredients that they had just bought from the restaurant to the hall. Looking at the table full of delicious food, all the students cheered, and among them, the happiest were Naruto and Ding Ci. The two of them even competed with each other, as if they were competing to see who could eat more. Looking at the two of them cleaning the food on the table, Hyojin was stunned for a moment. "Eat slowly. Don't choke." Naruto, who was wolfing down the food, said with a lisp, "Sensei." "I'm fine," Shikamaru laughed and said, "Naruto-sama, this is just a small matter for Ding Ci. Don't worry, he won't choke." "Am I worried that they will choke?" Hyojin thought to himself, then turned back to the kitchen, gritted his teeth, and ordered you. Tell Gale and the others to buy more ingredients. You covered her mouth and smiled, then asked curiously, Kuroto, why did you suddenly invite everyone over for a meal today? Are you going to announce something? Hyojin said casually, it's just a normal meal. He really just wanted to meet up with his disciples before the ceremony. On one hand, he wanted to explain some things, and on the other hand, he wanted to relieve his pressure and adjust his mentality for the ceremony of breaking through the bloodline seizing net. At this time, Ziyuan's shrill scream suddenly came from the living room. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you all. Chapter 1185. Ziyuan's sudden scream immediately broke the harmonious atmosphere in the living room. Everyone's eyes instantly focused on Ziyuan, even Naruto and Ding Si, whose mouth was full of food and cheeks bulging, were no exception. Then everyone found that Ziyuan seemed to have seen something terrible. She suddenly sat on the ground, trembling, and her face was extremely pale. Sasuke subconsciously opened his Sharingan and put one hand on the hilt of the Kusanagi sword at his waist, looking around vigilantly. At the same time, Niji also became vigilant. He immediately activated Byakugan and observed Ziyuan. Yakumo, Sakura, and the other girls surrounded her and asked with concern, what's wrong? However, Ziyuan was still in a daze, still looking frightened. Kakashi and the other Jonin instructors also came over. Among them, Mute, who was Ziyuan's instructor and also a medical ninja, directly went over to check Ziyuan's body. Kurenai cast a puzzled look at Kakashi and Asuma, as if asking them if they saw anything. Kakashi and Asuma shook their heads in silence, looking a little solemn. Even with their rich experience, they were also confused at this moment because there was no chakra fluctuation in the living room just now. Everyone present was also a fellow student or a Jonin instructor. Moreover, this was Naruto's house, so there was no possibility of a sneak attack. Therefore, they didn't understand why Ziyuan suddenly lost her composure and screamed. Soon, Hyojin and you rushed over from the kitchen. Ziyuan, what's wrong? Seeing Ziyuan's dazed face, you exclaimed and rushed over. Facing Kuroto's concerned gaze, Ziyuan, whose face was dull, couldn't help but burst into tears. Her eyes were filled with shock and sadness. Could it be Hyojin, who was about to step forward, suddenly realized something? After checking Ziyuan's body, Mute said doubtfully, only her heart rate is a little high. There's nothing else. Sasuke, who was staring at Ziyuan, said, no, I can feel that she was shrouded in a spiritual power, but it doesn't look like an illusion. Bayun and Ningxi looked at Ziyuan again and said in unison, she is not under an illusion. Hyojin, who had already roughly guessed what was going on, smiled and said, don't worry, everyone. This is Ziyuan's old problem. Every once in a while, she will feel inexplicably flustered. She will be fine after a while. Ling was puzzled. Why didn't I know that Ziyuan has such a problem? Hyojin scratched his head. Didn't I tell you? Oh, I must have forgotten. This is actually what her mother's previous Miko-sama told me. Mute was still a little worried. Why don't I send her to the hospital now and let Tsunade-sama examine her? Hyojin smiled and said, don't worry, it's just a small problem, it's not a big deal. Hearing Hyojin's words, everyone felt relieved and sat back in their original positions. Only Sasuke, who has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, was still staring at Ziyuan with suspicion. Although the spiritual fluctuation on Ziyuan's body just now was extremely short, only for a moment, but Kuroto was keenly aware that the spiritual fluctuation that enveloped Ziyuan was not much weaker than his own Manjikyu Sharingan, which is very suspicious. After calming everyone down a little, Hyojin took Ziyuan's hand and said, come with me. So, Ziyuan couldn't stop crying as she followed Hyojin out of the living room with a blank expression. After a while, Hyojin left the house with Ziyuan and came to the cliff of Naruto Rock. Standing quietly on the edge of the cliff, Hyojin looked down at the bustling my village under the breeze. After a long time, he took a deep breath and asked, "What did you see?" Ziyuan helplessly hugged her head and squatted on the ground. I saw your death." Sure enough, Hyojin was very calm, and there was not a trace of emotion on his face. He knew very well that Zen, as a Miko-sama, had the ability of death prophecy. When someone close to her was about to die, she would see the fragmented fragments of the other party's death in advance. This had been verified when Satoshi attacked the village before. At this moment, Ziyuan got up and grabbed Hyojin's sleeve. She asked with a sobbing tone, "How could this be? Are you Naruto? How could you die? This is impossible." Of course, Hyojin knew why, so he stroked Ziyuan's hair and tried his best to speak in a calm tone. "Tell me in detail what you saw." Ziyuan buried her face in Hyojin's body and shouted, "It's fake. Those are all fake." Hyojin comforted her. "Don't worry. The Miko-sama's death prophecy is not absolutely accurate. Your mother made a mistake back then. So, as long as you tell me in detail what you saw in the death prophecy, I might be able to avoid that kind of ending." Ziyuan, whose face was covered in tears, asked eagerly, "Really?" Hyojin nodded his head vigorously. "Yes, don't underestimate me. I'm Naruto." Under Hyojin's persuasion, Ziyuan recalled the terrifying scene she had just seen and said with a trembling voice, "I saw you standing on a stone platform, and many other people fused into your body." Hyojin's gaze was solemn as he asked, Then you pushed those people away with all your might and chased them out of your body. In the end, you fell on a stone platform," Ziyuan recalled as she spoke intermittently. Hyojin looked puzzled. "Pushed them away." He could understand Ziyuan's previous description. It was obvious that he was undergoing the blood succession fusion ritual. From the description, it could be seen that the ritual had entered the most critical moment. The 6 clones had already begun to fuse with his own body. However, he was a little confused by Ziyuan's description after that. He could not understand why he would push the 6 clones away. This action was obviously against the arrangements of his ritual. Moreover, from the results, after he pushed the 6 clones away in the death prophecy, the ritual was interrupted, and he died on the spot due to the interruption of the ritual. After pondering for a while, Hyojin still could not understand, so he asked again, "Are there any other scenes?" Only these." After a pause, Ziyuan asked worriedly, "If I tell you all this, will you really be fine?" Hyojin hid the doubt and uneasiness on his face and nodded gently. First update, please recommend votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1186. After instructing Ziyuan not to tell anyone about this, Hyojin returned home with a calm expression. When he got home, he found that everyone had left. Although the incident with Ziyuan was just a small interlude, it still ruined the atmosphere of the party. In addition, the classmates who had eaten and drunk their fill could not sit still at all. They were clamoring to compete with each other, so they left together. Ling asked Hyojin, "Is Ziyuan really okay?" Hyojin shook his head. "She's fine. Don't worry." While cleaning the house, Ling said, "I didn't expect Ziyuan to have such a small problem, but it's better to let Ms. Tsunade check on this kind of thing. What do you think?" "Okay, you can arrange this." After a pause, Hyojin said, "I'm a little tired. I'll go upstairs and rest first. Just clean the house casually. There's no need to clean it too thoroughly." Yui knows that Kuroto has been working hard on the Hashiman Inner Gate during this period of time and has been sweating in the practice field almost every day, so she didn't have any doubts and replied, "I know. You should rest well." After returning to his room and closing the door, Hyojin sat on the ground as if he had lost all his strength. "I can't believe it actually failed." Hyojin was a little bitter. He had always known that using the Gue Yero technique to break through the blood sequence net was only a theoretical possibility. The real success rate could not be guaranteed. This was because no one had succeeded so far. The success rate of this experiment was currently 0. However, even knowing this, he had always hoped that he would get lucky because he felt that he had prepared enough. The success rate was still very high. However, today, Ziyuan's death prophecy had shattered his fantasy. The sun gradually set in the west, and the light outside the window also dimmed. Downstairs, Ling had already finished cleaning the house and left in a hurry. Judging from her hurried footsteps, she was probably in a hurry to bring Ziyuan to my hospital so that Tsunade could examine Ziyuan's body. Therefore, in the gradually darkening night, only Hyojin was left in the room. He casually sat on the ground, his eyes a little out of focus. Right now, there was only one question in front of him. Was there still a need to continue this bloodline fusion ritual that was destined to fail? After a long time, the frosty moonlight shone through the window and onto Hyojin, who was sitting on the floor. Hyojin suddenly raised his head and looked at the bright moon hanging high in the night sky. For a moment, he was in a trance. It was as if he had returned to the days when he was hesitating about whether or not to inject the gene fluid, because at that time, he was just as helpless as he was today. For me, this has never been a multiple-choice question. A moment later, Hyojin chuckled self-deprecatingly, and his eyes regained their luster. He was afraid of death, but compared to death, he was more afraid of giving up hope and giving up his pursuit. Perhaps there was no turning back in front of him, but he didn't want to stop because he would rather grope his way forward in the dark than stay where he was, cowering in fear and hesitation for the rest of his life. Phew! Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air from his chest, Hyojin got up and walked to the window. Staring at the vast starry sky, he grinned. How can I be willing to be insignificant and stay under this world for the rest of my life? Soon, Hyojin retracted his thoughts and pondered about Ziyuan's death prophecy. The reason why Ziyuan had a death prophecy meant that he had still performed the bloodline fusion ritual in the end. In other words, the Hyojin who died in the bloodline fusion ritual in Ziyuan's prophecy should also have known in advance that he would die in the bloodline fusion ritual. In other words, it was precisely because Hyojin wouldn't give up the bloodline fusion ritual whether or not he received the death prophecy's reminder that Ziyuan saw the death prophecy. That was also why Ziyuan's death prophecy failed to prevent Hyojin's death. After understanding the cycle of the death prophecy, Kuroto began to think about the most critical and also the question that he is most concerned about. That is, why did the Kekkei Genkai fusion ritual that he has been preparing for more than a decade fail? What exactly went wrong? For this reason, he calmed down and sorted out the various parts of the bloodline fusion ritual, trying to find possible loopholes in these parts. However, all the parts of the ritual had been repeatedly deliberated by him countless times. If there were really loopholes that he could detect, he would have found them long ago. There was no need to wait until now. Hyojin secretly analyzed, the part that went wrong should be the part after the fusion. Currently, a total of 2 bloodline fusion rituals have been carried out in the shinobi world. One was carried out by Hiriko, and the other was carried out by Danzo. Hyojin observed both of these rituals, so he is very clear about the effects of these 2 rituals. Because Hiriko's bloodline fusion ritual was the first time he tried to use the chimera technique to fuse with other people's bodies, so from the current perspective, it was very rough and crude. And the effect was also not as good as expected. Although Hiriko's luck was excellent at that time, in the end, he only barely managed to take away the bloodline limit of the few Kekkei Genkai ninjas that were sacrificed, and there was a huge flaw in the ritual, so he failed to complete the evolution of life. Compared to Hiriko, Danzo's bloodline fusion ritual has improved a lot. Although there was also the fatal problem of not being able to completely fuse with the souls of the few Kekkei Genkai ninjas that were sacrificed, but if it wasn't for Hyojin's interference at that time, Danzo would have really obtained a pair of Rinnegan. Therefore, Danzo's ritual almost touched upon the evolution of life. Thinking of this, Hyojin divided the process of the ritual into several stages in detail. The first stage is to fuse with the bloodline limit, which is also the most basic function of the bloodline fusion ritual. Hiriko's ritual was in this stage, and this stage does not involve the evolution of life. The second stage is the improvement of the chakra's quality. The most obvious manifestation is that the Sharingan will evolve into Manjikyu Sharingan, Eternal Manjiki Sharingan, and even Rinnegan. Danzo's ritual stopped at this stage, and this stage does not involve the evolution of life, but it is already the peak below the six-path realm, just one step away from touching upon the evolution of life. The third stage is the six-path realm, and the embodiment of this stage should be the truth-seeking ball. If the truth-seeking ball can be successfully condensed, then this stage will be considered completed, and this stage will truly touch upon the evolution of life. Finally, the fourth stage is the theoretical limit of the bloodline fusion ritual, which is to completely fuse the 7 attributes of chakra, yin-yang, 5 elements, and 7 chakra attributes. The second part is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1187. After dividing the process of the ritual into 4 stages, Hyojin slightly frowned. Hiriko only completed the first stage, while Shimura Danzo fell in the second stage. In other words, no one in the shinobi world has even attempted to enter the third stage, let alone the fourth stage after the third stage. According to the basic law of power level improvement, the difficulty of the first stage of the fusion of the Kekkei Genkai and the second stage of the enhancement of the quality of the chakra are not comparable to the third stage of the fusion of the truth-seeking ball and the fourth stage of the fusion of the yin-yang, 5 elements, and 7 attributes. Because the difficulty of each stage increases exponentially, and the further one goes, the more difficult it becomes. Relying on Hiriko and Danzo, the 2 mice, Hyojin has already explored the first and second stages. All the preparations he has made so far are only for the first stage, and the second stage seems to be more than adequate. But the third and fourth stages, which are really crucial, are still unknown to him. Whether his preparations can cope with the third and fourth stages is something he can't judge at all. After thinking about it, there are only 2 ways to solve this problem. He could either cultivate another lab rat like before, or he could try it himself. Training another mouse, whether it is time or efficiency, is not realistic. After all, there's no one in the shinobi world like Danzo, who is bold and daring to think and act, but has great ambition but little talent. What's more, it is very difficult for an ordinary mouse to complete the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage to let Hyojin see what is going on. Therefore, Hyojin only has one choice left, and that is to try it himself. Perhaps only by really dying once will he know where he went wrong. This may be the real reason why I ignored Ziyuan's death prophecy and insisted on carrying out the ritual. Hyojin smiled self-deprecatingly. Now he is caught in an endless loop. That is, if he doesn't carry out the ritual, he will never know where he went wrong. But if he carries out the ritual, he will inevitably die in the ritual. Fortunately, he, who had always been cautious, had already prepared a contingency plan in case something went wrong during the ritual. Therefore, in the face of this endless loop, he was not completely without a way to break it. Hyojin has always been good at managing his emotions, so he quickly calmed the frustration in his heart, from the uncertainty of the results of the ritual to how to use this death to explore the third and fourth stages of the ritual and clear all the obstacles for the second ritual after the resurrection. At the same time, he must also deal with the various matters after his death. He can't let the situation collapse during this period. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly had an idea, and the inspiration was Orochimaru, who was defeated by Sasuke. If I will inevitably die in the ritual and cannot be resurrected immediately, the Edo Tensei may be a good method. At least I can move freely and prepare for the second ritual. The technique, Edo Tensei, actually has a huge risk of losing control. And Hyojin just saw this risk because in the original space and time, Uchiha Madara easily got rid of the control of the pharmacist's pocket with his own control of Edo Tensei and became his own special Edo body. If death is inevitable, and Xiang Lin can't use reincarnation nature technique in the near future, then it is a good choice to let himself become a free Edo body like Uchiha Madara. At this point, Hyojin's figure disappeared from the room. He ran all the way in the village, and in a blink of an eye, he came to the Naruto building and then he went to the confidential archives in the underground of the Naruto building with no expression. In the dark passage, he walked slowly. Naruto-sama. Every time he walked, an Umbu hidden in the shadows would appear and salute him. These Umbu that he had to find ways to bypass many years ago have now become his loyal guards. Hyojin nodded to the Umbu, passed through all the checkpoints without any hindrance, and entered the confidential archives. In the confidential archives, he quickly found the box containing the Book of Seals. After unlocking the seal on the box, he took out the Book of Seals inside. There is no doubt that this large volume of Book of Seals sealed in the box is the one that Naruto stole in the original space and time. It can also be seen from this that with the village's protection of the Book of Seals, Naruto, who didn't even graduate from the ninja school in the original time and space, would never be able to successfully steal it. There was no accident in that matter, only intentional. Spreading the Book of Seals on the table, Hyojin's eyes swept through the forbidden techniques recorded on it, and finally fell on the words impure earth reincarnation. To be honest, Hyojin wasn't very interested in the technique impure earth reincarnation. Of course, this wasn't because he looked down on this technique, but because his bloodline trap plan took up too much of his energy, so he didn't have the mood to dabble in techniques that had nothing to do with it. Now that impure earth reincarnation has become a part of his bloodline trap plan, he must seriously study this technique. After carefully studying the part about impure earth reincarnation in the Book of Seals, Hyojin had to admit that the second-generation Naruto was a daring ghost. This method of summoning the undead through psychic techniques was really strange and ingenious. I really can't imagine that this kind of unethical forbidden technique was actually developed by Naruto himself. It seems that among all the Narutos, my moral bottom line is still quite high. After sighing with emotion, Hyojin began to study impure earth reincarnation seriously. Simply put, impure earth reincarnation is a technique that uses the cells of the dead to extract a small amount of the soul of the dead, then using this small amount of soul as a guide. Through psychic techniques, the soul of the dead located in the underworld is channeled to the shinobi world, and then forcibly put the soul into a prepared sacrifice. Because of this, the strength of the sacrifice will directly affect the strength of the impure earth body. In the original story, the different strength of the impure earth body at different times is directly related to the strength of the sacrifice. During the Fourth Shinobi World War, Orochimaru used a special white Zetsu clone as a sacrifice, and the strength of the impure earth body was close to the strength of the impure earth body during the Chunin exam. Rubbing his chin, Hyojin thought to himself, "It seems that I have to prepare a body for my impure earth body." Third update, seeking recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1188. In addition to being the sacrifice for the body of the impure earth form, the accuracy of the impure earth reincarnation would also directly affect the spirituality and strength of the impure earth form. This version is too backward. After carefully deducing the impure earth reincarnation recorded in the Book of Seals, Hyojin felt that if he used the original version of the impure earth reincarnation, it would be very difficult to say how much spirituality his impure earth form would have in the future. He wasn't even sure if the impure earth reincarnation would be his complete self. Frowning, Hyojin slowly closed the Book of Seals. It should be known that the impure earth reincarnation that Orochimaru used during the Fourth Shinobi World War wasn't the original version developed by the second Sama. Instead, it was a new version that Orochimaru had been experimenting and improving for many years. From a certain point of view, Orochimaru was the second developer of the impure earth reincarnation forbidden technique. Because the second Sama's original intention of developing the impure earth reincarnation forbidden technique was to use an immortal body to perform another forbidden technique called the multiplying detonation talisman. But Orochimaru wasn't. Orochimaru was keenly aware that the true function of the impure earth reincarnation forbidden technique was to blur the boundary between life and death, allowing the dead to return to the shinobi world. Therefore, the direction of his improvement has always been the accuracy and control of the impure earth form. He hoped that through accurate impure earth reincarnation forbidden technique, the soul of the dead in the underworld will be able to reach the shinobi world and ensure the spirituality of the impure earth form. If Hyojin had to choose, the improved version of the impure earth reincarnation forbidden technique by Orochimaru would meet his requirements. Of course, with Hyojin's current development ability, as long as he was willing to do it, he could also improve the impure earth reincarnation forbidden technique recorded in the Book of Seals to meet his requirements. Orochimaru, with a cold glint in his eyes, Hyojin put the Book of Sealing away and left the secret archive. Then, he left a shadow clone in the village, and then he quietly left the village under the cover of the night and rushed towards the country of Tian. Rather than wasting time and energy on improving the impure earth reincarnation, he might as well find a way to obtain the latest version from Orochimaru. This was because Orochimaru's strength was not inferior to his in terms of the development and improvement of such forbidden techniques. This was especially so for the impure earth reincarnation technique. Orochimaru had invested a lot of effort into it. If Hyojin wanted to catch up to Orochimaru's improvement from scratch, it would be a waste of time. Moreover, if he wanted to personally improve the filthy earth reincarnation, Hyojin would have to repeatedly deal with corpses, souls, and the like. If it wasn't necessary, he wasn't willing to play with the dead. Galloping all the way, it would normally take 1 to 2 weeks. It took Hyojin less than 2 days to reach the Sound Village in the country of Tian. Unlike usual, the Sound Village was on high alert at this time. This was obviously because after the failure to capture Sasuke last time, Orochimaru was worried that Sasuke would report to Mai that he was the behind-the-scenes leader of the Sound Village, so he temporarily strengthened his vigilance. However, Orochimaru's preparation seemed a bit perfunctory. If Sasuke really reported that Orochimaru was the behind-the-scenes leader of the Sound Village and led the 4 Sound Ninjas to attack him to the village, then the village would either not do anything, or it would be a thunderous blow. The Sound Village seemed to be heavily guarded, but such a defense could not resist the joint attack of the 5 great ninja villages. Orochimaru may also be aware of this, so he put on a show. Noticing the arrival of Hyojin, Yakushido greeted him with a smile and said, "Naruto-sama, please come with me. Orochimaru Sama is waiting for you." Hyojin nodded, entering a dark underground palace. After walking around for a long time, Kuroto finally saw Orochimaru sitting on a high-backed chair with bandages all over his body. Orochimaru looked at Hyojin and asked, "Kuroto, you rarely come here. Is it because of Uchiha Sasuke this time?" Hyojin said, "I have helped you cover up the matter of you attacking Sasuke." "Oh, no wonder the village hasn't sent anyone here yet, and there is no response from the Uchiha clan. Sure enough, it was you who did it." Orochimaru chuckled. From his expression, Hyojin can see that he doesn't care too much about the exposure of his identity as the leader of the Sound Village, or rather, he doesn't care too much about the foundation of the Sound Village. Hyojin no longer beat around the bush and said straightforwardly, "Sensei, I need your help." "Oh." Orochimaru suddenly became interested, and a light flashed in his eyes. Hyojin said calmly, "I need the Edo Tensei technique in your hands." Orochimaru tapped his fingers on the armrest of the bench and said, "If I remember correctly, there should be the original scroll of Edo Tensei technique in the village, right? What I need is the latest version in your hands." Hyojin paused and looked directly at Orochimaru. "I think you should understand what I mean." Orochimaru had a playful look on his face. "Hey, you seem to know the progress of my development very well. Did you place a spy around me?" Hyojin shook his head. "I don't need a spy for this kind of thing. I have already learned about the process of your fight with Sasuke." That level of Edo Tensei technique is not something that can be achieved with the original version of Edo Tensei technique. After a moment of silence, Orochimaru said, "I can agree to your request, but you also have to agree to one of my requests." Hyojin frowned. "You don't want me to deal with Uchiha again, do you? You should know how strong Uchiha is now. I, as Naruto, have a limited ability to suppress them. Maybe I will become the second short-lived Naruto in the village." Thinking of the previous fight with Sasuke, Orochimaru's face became gloomy. "Of course, I know how difficult the Uchiha clan is now. Even the youngest Uchiha Sasuke has grown up, so I won't ask you to do something you can't do." After saying that, Orochimaru waved to a shadow in the room. In an instant, a figure walked out of the shadow and bowed to Orochimaru. "Lord Orochimaru." Hyojin looked over and was immediately stunned. The figure who walked out of the shadow was a boy who looked 13 or 14 years old. What surprised Hyojin was that this boy should not have appeared in this era. Orochimaru smiled. "His name is Suyue, and he is my disciple. What I want you to do is very simple. Bring him back to my village and let him join the team of Uchiha Sasuke." Fourth update. Please recommend votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1189. There is no doubt that the boy called Cu by Orochimaru was the android that should have appeared a few decades later. Was it because he accidentally died in the hands of Danzo and lost his body, which caused Orochimaru to start human cloning experiments ahead of time? Or is Orochimaru also preparing his own bloodline fusion ritual? For a moment, mixed thoughts surged in Hyojin's heart. Orochimaru smiled and said, "This small request shouldn't be a problem for you as fifth-generation Naruto, right?" Sigh. After sighing, Hyojin looked at Cu again. He was very clear that there must be Orochimaru's genetic information in Cu's body, and considering that Orochimaru had been living in Medicine Master Do's body before, it was likely that Cu's body also contained Medicine Master Do's genetic information. In other words, this Cu may be different from the Cu in the original space and time. He moved his eyes to Cu's eyes. For some reason, Hyojin felt that Cu's eyes were very clear and pure, just like a piece of white paper. It's hard to imagine that Orochimaru's genetic information could produce such a pure child, although from many physical characteristics, it could be seen that Cu and Orochimaru were related. It felt that this boy named Cu was a completely different individual from Orochimaru. After thinking for a long time, Hyojin said to Orochimaru, "Sensei, you really gave me a big problem. In Sasuke's team, there is Nine Tails' Jinchuriki, and the instructor is Kakashi, that smart guy. You know I can't fool that guy." Orochimaru said in a deep voice, "Kakashi is indeed troublesome, but I believe you have a way. Letting an unknown person join the team of Jinchuriki, even if I am Naruto, I can't make such a decision." After a pause, Hyojin said helplessly, "I can only say that I will try my best. I can't promise you anything." Orochimaru nodded. He also knows how much protection the 5 great ninja villages have for Jinchuriki, and he also knows that Hyojin's power in the village is restricted by the acting Naruto and the advisory elder group, so he didn't force Hyojin too much. Hyojin continued, "I have to remind you that if you want to use this boy to sneak attack Sasuke and snatch Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan, the probability of success is not high." Orochimaru said with a smile, "This is not a problem you need to worry about, just like I don't care what you want to do with the Edo Tensei Jutsu." Hyojin understood that this is a deal, so he nodded. Soon, Yakushi came to Hyojin with a scroll and said, "Naruto-sama, if you don't trust me, you can open it and check it now." Hyojin didn't stand on ceremony and directly opened the scroll in front of Orochimaru and Yakushi. What is recorded in the scroll is indeed the Edo Tensei Jutsu, and it is different from the original version in the Book of Seals. The Edo Tensei Jutsu recorded in the scroll is much more complicated, and there are many strange seals in it. Even a sealing master like Hyojin can't see the specific functions of these seals for a while. After slowly closing the scroll, Hyojin knows that he must go back and give it a try to determine whether the Edo Tensei Jutsu recorded in the scroll is really effective or not. But considering that Orochimaru handed over the Edo Tensei to him, the possibility of Orochimaru cheating on the scroll is very low. After the deal is done, Hyojin didn't stay any longer and directly said goodbye to Orochimaru. Just as Hyojin turned around and left, Yakushi bowed to Hyojin with respect and said in a very sincere tone, "Naruto-sama, please take care of the Edo Tensei." Looking at the concerned eyes of Orochimaru and Yakushi-do looking at the Edo Tensei, Hyojin suddenly had an inexplicable strange feeling in his heart. "Don't worry, as long as he doesn't do anything stupid, I promise he will not be in danger in my village." After a perfunctory sentence, Hyojin quickly left the underground palace with the Edo Tensei. After Hyojin left, Yakushi-do asked Orochimaru, "Orochimaru-sama, with his current status, there should be no need for him to study the Edo Tensei Jutsu, right?" Orochimaru also had a puzzled look on his face. There is no doubt that Orochimaru doesn't care about Hyojin's purpose of seeking the Edo Tensei Jutsu like he said. On the contrary, he is very concerned about Hyojin's purpose. After a while, Orochimaru said, "He probably wants to resurrect someone." Yakushi-do nodded. "Well, this is the only way to explain why he needs the Edo Tensei Jutsu that you modified. But who does he want to resurrect?" Orochimaru said gloomily, "Yes, who does he want to resurrect?" On Hyojin's side, after leaving the Sound Village, he didn't slow down. On one hand, he was in a hurry, and on the other hand, he wanted to test the Edo Tensei's strength. But as he expected, the Edo Tensei was very strong, at least in terms of speed. At this time, the Edo Tensei asked, "Sama, how should I address you?" Hyojin had a headache again. From the perspective of Orochimaru, the Edo Tensei should be his younger brother, but he obviously can't introduce the Edo Tensei to the village. After a little thought, Hyojin asked the Edo Tensei, "What ninjutsu are you good at?" The Edo Tensei replied, "I'm good at wind and lightning release ninjutsu. I can also use water and earth release ninjutsu, but my fire release ninjutsu is slightly worse." All attributes, huh? Kuroto paused for a moment before asking, "Then, do you know how to use ninjutsu, such as Hidden Snake Hand and Orochi Substitution Technique?" "Well, I know these two." The Edo Tensei nodded. Hyojin said, "If that's the case, it's really not good to use a fake identity. Orochimaru's snake-type ninjutsu is currently unique in the shinobi world. Once Uchiha uses similar ninjutsu, it is equivalent to writing the fact that he is one of Orochimaru's subordinates on his face, and there is no way to hide it. Fortunately, facing the pressure from the Akatsuki, the Elder Council has already decided to accept Orochimaru, so Hyojin can do something in this regard. Why don't we just admit to the Elder Council that CU is the disciple of Orochimaru? This will reduce everyone's suspicion. Anyway, the 3 generations have already asked me to contact Orochimaru. The advisory group of elders had the intention to accept Orochimaru again, and the village did not know about Orochimaru's attack on Sasuke not long ago, so this gave Hyojin quite a lot of room to maneuver. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I want to thank all the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1190. Everyone, please support me with your monthly votes. 5 chapters of 10,000 words is already my limit. I really can't go any further. Everyone, please support me with your monthly votes on account of my hard work. Thank you. Oh, please. 5 chapters of the world of Naruto in the Eyes of Reincarnation have been uploaded. Please support me with your monthly votes at the end of the month. Currently in the middle of uploading. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 1191. Inside Naruto's office, Jiraiya stared at Satsuki up and down several times, then asked with a look of disbelief, "He really is the son of Orochimaru?" "Yes." Hyojin nodded solemnly. Tsunade's expression was a little strange. "Kuroto, This joke is not funny at all. Without further explanation, Hyojin asked Seiyu in front of everyone, "Who is Orochimaru to you?" Seiyu answered obediently, "Orochimaru is my father." Hyojin spread his hands to the crowd. Even the three generations couldn't sit still anymore. They moved closer to Seiyu and observed for a long time before saying, "Not bad. Between your brows, you do have the shadow of Orochimaru when he was young." After the three generations said so, Jiraiya and Tsunade had nothing else to say. Even so, they still couldn't believe that a person like Orochimaru could have a son. Their expressions were as strange as it could get. Orochimaru must have had a rough time these years. After he defected from the village, he joined the Akatsuki, and then he defected from the Akatsuki again and again. He was hunted down by the Akatsuki again and again, living a miserable life in hiding. Hyojin added oil and vinegar to describe Orochimaru's miserable life. He described Orochimaru as a wandering, poor, and precarious trader in the ninja world. That was miserable. After listening to Hyojin's narration, the three generations, Jiraiya, and Tsunade were all silent. Obviously, they believed Hyojin's words. It wasn't that they didn't have the ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood, but the Akatsuki gave them too much psychological pressure. If it wasn't for Amatsukumi's intervention, the 5 great ninja villages would have been wiped out by the Akatsuki. So, they felt that it was not easy for Orochimaru to survive after being hunted down by the Akatsuki. As Orochimaru's teacher and teammate, their feelings for Orochimaru were very sincere. If it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have let Orochimaru do nothing for so long. Looking at everyone's reaction, Hyojin continued, "Recently, I finally contacted Orochimaru through a special channel and told him about the village's decision, but he seemed to have some doubts." Tsunade suddenly frowned. Since the village agreed to let bygones be bygones, what doubts does he have? Perhaps he is worried that he won't be forgiven by the rest of the village, or perhaps he is worried that the Akatsuki's pursuit of him will implicate the village. In any case, he still can't make up his mind. After a pause, Hyojin pointed to Uchiha and said, "But Uchiha is his own flesh and blood, and he really can't bear to take Uchiha with him to face the Akatsuki's pursuit with him. So he asked me to bring Uchiha back to the village." Jiraiya rubbed Uchiha's head and said, "Since he is Orochimaru's son, then, as his uncle, I can't just sit back and do nothing. Uchiha will follow me from now on." Hyojin shook his head. In order to avoid the Akatsuki's pursuit, Orochimaru doesn't want the identity of Uchiha to be his son to be exposed, so it's better to let Uchiha live in the village as an ordinary ninja. The three generations took a puff of their cigarette and nodded. Jiraiya is not only the village's advisory elder, but also one of Mai's Sannin. His identity is too sensitive. If a teenager suddenly appears beside him, it will be too conspicuous. Hyojin pretended to be casual and said, "Why don't you let Uchiha join Kakashi's class? Anyway, with Kakashi watching over him, there shouldn't be a problem." Zhuan Xiaochun immediately objected. "I object. How can we let Orochimaru-san be in the same class as Naruto? Don't forget that Orochimaru once attacked Naruto." Hyojin smiled and said, "That's why it should be arranged like this. With Uchiha joining, Orochimaru won't dare to attack Naruto anymore." Kakashi, who hasn't said much, said, "In fact, we don't have to worry too much about the threat of Orochimaru now. Naruto and Sasuke are not children anymore." Jiraiya also echoed, "Yes, even I don't have the confidence to take down those 2 kids now." Naruto, who has mastered the Nine Tails Chakra mode, and Sasuke, who has the Manjikyu Sharingan, both have the strength of a Kage. The only thing they lack may be some actual combat experience. So even Jiraiya can't say that he can easily take them down. The three generations considered for a while and felt that it is indeed a good idea to let Naruto and Sasuke, who are far more powerful than their peers, monitor Uchiha Suyue in order to contain Orochimaru. So they said, "That's it then." Seeing that everyone had agreed, Little Chun had no choice but to nod as well. After handing over Uchiha to Kakashi, Hyojin left the Naruto building and thought. Anyway, I have done what Orochimaru asked me to do. As for the method, with his pragmatic personality, he shouldn't care too much about it. After all, Uchiha Siwe is indeed his son, and I didn't lie. Hyojin is not prepared to waste any more energy on the matter of Uchiha Siwe. No matter what kind of tricks Orochimaru has up his sleeves, he doesn't care, because Naruto and Sasuke have grown ahead of time with his intervention. In the future, the two of them will only become stronger and stronger, to the point that it will be difficult for anyone to adapt to them. Therefore, no matter what kind of tricks Orochimaru has up his sleeves, it is too late now. Of course, in order to avoid accidents, Kuroda will use the name of Amatsukami to issue a secret mission to Sasuke to monitor Uchiha Suyue. As long as Sasuke is prepared, there won't be many people in the shinobi world who can plot against him. Back home, Hyojin took out the scroll that recorded the Edo Tensei Jutsu that he traded with Orochimaru and carefully studied it. With his current strength, learning the Edo Tensei Jutsu is not difficult at all. The real difficulty lies in the fact that no matter how thoroughly he understands a theoretical knowledge, he still needs to practice it once to confirm whether he has really mastered it or not. Moreover, the Edo Tensei Jutsu is different from ordinary techniques, and it can't be practiced at any training ground. Who should I use to practice? Propping his chin with one hand, Hyojin was in a dilemma. For a moment, he didn't know whether he should find a random corpse to practice the Edo Tensei Jutsu, or use this opportunity to use the Edo Tensei Jutsu on a dead person who is useful to him. After thinking about it for a while, he found that there is no dead person who is worthy of him practicing the Edo Tensei Jutsu. Moreover, he must keep the fact that he is practicing the Edo Tensei Jutsu a secret. If he casually uses the Edo Tensei Jutsu on someone, he will need to destroy the corpse and even erase the spirit body of the person, which is very troublesome. At that moment, his thoughts changed, and he suddenly thought of someone. First update, please recommend monthly votes. Chapter 1192. Walking slowly in the dark passage, Shinichi looked puzzled. He did not understand why Hyojin had called him here in the middle of the night. A moment later, Shinichi, who had passed through the winding passage, finally arrived at the brightly lit hall. What he saw was Hyojin, who was studying something at the table and a freezer in the middle of the hall. Shinichi's eyes narrowed. He was very familiar with the freezer because it contained the corpse of his girlfriend, Kurumi Uchiha, whom he had been trying to resurrect. Hyojin raised his head and glanced at Shinichi, who was in a daze. "You're here." Shinichi was puzzled. "Boss, what are you?" Hyojin slowly closed the scroll of the impure earth reincarnation technique, got up, and walked to the freezer. He said, "Do you still remember our first deal?" Shinichi nodded. "Yes, I've worked for you for 15 years. You'll help me resurrect Kurumi." Hyojin said emotionally, "Counting the days, there's not much time left of the 15-year deadline." When Shinichi had defected, Naruto and Sasuke had only been 2 or 3 years old. In the blink of an eye, Naruto and Sasuke were already 13 or 14 years old. More than 10 years had passed. Shinichi also walked to the freezer. As he looked at his girlfriend under the glass cover of the freezer, he said, "Time flies." By now, he is no longer concerned about the 15-year deadline. Even if the time limit is exceeded, he will not force Kuroda, because he believes that Kuroda will not forget the promise he made to him at the beginning. Hyojin said, "At the moment, I have no way to resurrect her perfectly. However, I've recently mastered a technique that can resurrect her spirit body." Then, Hyojin explained the situation of the impure earth reincarnation technique to Shinichi in detail. Hearing this, Shinichi was stunned and fell into a dilemma. Clearly, the impure earth reincarnation wasn't considered a true resurrection. At best, it could only be considered a summoning of the soul. Therefore, Shinichi was a little tempted, but he was also filled with doubts. "I'm just offering a suggestion. Whether you want to proceed or not is up to you." Hyojin did not rush him. After he finished speaking, he retreated to the side and let Shinichi think about it. Shinichi asked, "Boss, is this the only way?" Hyojin shook his head. No, this is just a temporary solution. I will resurrect her completely later. Shinichi heaved a sigh of relief and asked, will this affect her resurrection? No, as Kurumi Uchiha's body was preserved very well and could be used as a sacrifice. Hyojin planned to use Kurumi Uchiha's body as a sacrifice for the impure earth body. This would allow Kurumi Uchiha's spirit body to return to her own body. Moreover, doing so would not affect the resurrection of the natural reincarnation technique. In the original space-time, Madara Uchiha, who had been directly resurrected by the impure earth reincarnation technique, had been directly resurrected through the natural reincarnation technique. Of course, the prerequisite was that the precision of the impure earth reincarnation technique must be high enough, and the spirit body must be relatively complete. Shinichi did not think for too long and quickly nodded. Boss, I'll leave it to you then. After getting Shinichi's permission, Hyojin did not waste any time and immediately prepared the ritual for the impure earth reincarnation technique. Because it was his first attempt, he was meticulous in every step and every detail. It took him more than half an hour to complete the initial preparations for the ritual. Afterward, he ordered Shinichi to take out Kurumi Uchiha's body from the freezer and put in the center of the ritual engraved with various spiritual techniques. After completing all the preparations for the ritual, Hyojin closed his eyes and then slowly opened them, revealing the Tenseigan in his eye sockets. Whether it was Onaim-sama or Orochimaru, their research and development of the Edo Tensei Jutsu was, in fact, only at the application stage. As for the more profound things, such as the underworld, spirit body, and other core elements involved in the technique, these two developers actually only had a smattering of knowledge. This was not a strange thing, because the process of developing a secret technique or forbidden technique was often full of all kinds of accidents. Therefore, the success of the developer is more or less based on luck. So even the developer of the technique may misjudge or not understand the potential and underlying principles of the technique. The Edo Tensei technique developed by the second Dame-sama is like this, and the Oni-era technique developed by Hiriko is also like this, and even the undead reincarnation technique developed by Orochimaru has many aspects that even the developer, Orochimaru, can't understand. For the same reason, even if Hyojin's cloning technology is very mature, he still can't explain why there is such a miraculous talent like the wind release clone, nor can he replicate it. Therefore, even if he has completely understood all the contents of the impure earth reincarnation technique, Hyojin can't take it lightly. At the same time, he also wants to take this rare opportunity to feel the connection between the underworld and the shinobi world and personally experience how the impure earth reincarnation technique blurs the boundary between life and death. Seeing that Hyojin had even activated the Tenseigan, Shinichi also became nervous. Boss, is there a problem? Hyojin didn't answer. He just waved his hand, motioning for Shinichi to step back a little, and then made a hand seal according to the requirements of the scroll, and then suddenly pressed it on the ground. Impure earth reincarnation technique. In an instant, a cold wind blew in the underground laboratory, and then a scream that seemed to come from the netherworld came from the mouth of Kurumi Uchiha's corpse. Seeing this strange scene, Shinichi's pupils shrank, and he subconsciously opened his Manjikyu Sharingan. Hyojin also opened his eyes wide, and the Tenseigan in his eye sockets bloomed with a brilliant light. At this moment, countless talismans seemed to have come from another world to the shinobi world. Not only did they appear out of thin air, but they also flocked to wrap around Kurumi Uchiha's corpse. Kurumi Uchiha's corpse, which was wrapped by the talismans, immediately struggled violently. Then, everything gradually calmed down, and her expression slowly changed from the initial dullness to liveliness. Soon, Kurumi Uchiha's face was filled with horror as she stared at Hyojin. Where is this? Who are you? Hyojin calmly looked at Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth body and asked tentatively, Kurumi Uchiha? Yes, it's me. Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth body nodded, and the fear in her eyes turned into surprise. This was because she noticed that Hyojin was actually wearing Naruto's Haori. From the corner of his eye, Hyojin noticed that Shinichi, who had retreated to the corner, was crying like an idiot. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1193. This idiot. After cursing Shinichi in his heart, Hyojin looked at Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form in front of him. From the outside, Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form didn't seem to have changed much from the previous corpse. This was something Hyojin was sure of after activating his Tenseigan. However, during the impure earth reincarnation process, he keenly noticed that when Kurumi Uchiha's spiritual body was thrown into the corpse by him from the underworld, the talisman wrapping the corpse was eroding Kurumi Uchiha's corpse as a sacrifice. In other words, the sacrifice would be eroded by the underworld during the whole process of casting the technique. No wonder the scroll emphasized that at the very least, the corpse of a ninja who could refine chakra was needed as a sacrifice. So that's the reason. Damn it, why didn't that fellow Orochimaru write it down clearly? Hyojin's face darkened. Although he couldn't say for sure what kind of effects this kind of erosion from the underworld would have on his body, after discovering this, he obviously didn't dare to use his in-release body as a sacrifice for the impure earth reincarnation. At the same time, he quickly realized that this might not be Orochimaru deliberately tricking him, but Orochimaru himself didn't realize it. After all, not everyone was like him, who had the Tenseigan that could see through all the minute changes. Moreover, even he had only seen the general situation just now. After temporarily suppressing this point, Hyojin explained the situation to the confused Kurumi Uchiha while using the opportunity to evaluate the spirituality of Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form. I've been resurrected? After hearing Hyojin's words, Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form looked at her hands that were full of cracks like paper, her face full of disbelief. Kuroto explained, it's not a true resurrection, it's just a kind of forbidden jutsu. Yui Uchiha immediately became vigilant. You are Hyojin. Why would you do that? And why are you wearing Naruto's robe? When Kurumi Uchiha died, Hyojin was only in his teens. Now that he was in his 20s, Kurumi Uchiha did not immediately recognize Hyojin. Hyojin pointed at Shinichi, who was still cowering in the corner, and said calmly, "If you want to know why I'm doing this, you can ask that idiot. By the way, I am now the village's 5th generation Naruto." Shinichi? Following the direction of Hyojin's finger, Kurumi Uchiha finally found Shinichi, who was cowering in the corner. Shinichi slowly raised his right hand and waved at Kurumi Uchiha. Hyojin did not disturb Shinichi's reunion and left the underground laboratory. Hyojin had already told Shinichi how to place Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form. Shinichi had also agreed to temporarily leave Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form in the underground laboratory. After all, resurrection was not something that should be exposed at the moment. At the very least, before Hyojin completed the bloodline net and truly resurrected Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form had to be hidden. This was not because Hyojin was afraid of anything, but because he did not want to cause any unforeseen events and affect his bloodline net plan. As long as he, as the caster, did not give any orders to Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form, Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form would be free, no different from a living person. According to his conversation with Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form, Hyojin felt that Kurumi Uchiha's impure earth form had a very high level of intelligence. Her memory, logical thinking, reaction, and so on were no different from a normal person. This meant that the accuracy of his impure earth reincarnation this time was very high. Kurumi Uchiha's spiritual body that came from the netherworld realm was more complete. After returning home, Hyojin began to record down the first impure earth reincarnation experiment. After recording down the entire process, the problems he discovered, and the conjectures he made, he put down the pen in his hand and fell into deep thought. from the current situation, the erosion of offerings from the netherworld was real. It's just that whether it was in the original time and space or this time and space, the follow-up effects caused by this erosion did not appear. As an impure earth form, Madara Uchiha also successfully became a Jubi's Jinchuriki after being resurrected and stepped into the six-path level. However, Madara's example did not completely reassure Hyojin, because what he was pursuing was not the six-path level, but the almost immortal bloodline net. Therefore, without knowing the consequences, he could not allow his own body to suffer any unknown damage. It seems that I still need to prepare another offering. Hyojin completely dispelled the idea of using his own body as an offering for the impure earth form. Then, he considered the placement of his Tenseigan after death. With the Tenseigan, although he can suppress the cage bird mantra for a period of time, he can't completely eradicate the cage bird. Therefore, when he was attacking Bloodline Net, he had to solve the cage bird engraved on his spirit body. This is also one of the reasons why he insisted on attacking Bloodline Net. But now the situation has changed. His first ritual will inevitably end in failure, and once he dies, his cage bird may destroy the Tenseigan in his eye socket. Therefore, he must safely remove his Tenseigan before he dies. And in order to carry out the second ritual after death and resurrection smoothly, he must keep his Tenseigan in the best state. This requires someone to nourish his Tenseigan with Byakugan chakra during the period after his death, so that his Tenseigan can be nourished by Byakugan chakra and maintain its peak activity. In the current shinobi world, there are not many ninjas who meet the requirements of nourishing his Tenseigan, and there are even fewer who are worthy of his trust. After thinking about it, he could only think of Hyuga Yui and Hyuga Ningxi. As for the others, they either don't have Byakugan chakra, or they are not reliable enough. Comparatively speaking, Yui is actually the most reliable, but Yui's talent is only slightly better than Hyojin before the injection of the gene serum. At present, she has only barely mastered the Een seal, so the burden of the Tenseigan is too heavy for her. She can't bear it at all. As for Ningxi, although he is slightly less reliable than Yui, he is also reliable enough. In addition, Ningxi's talent is currently one of the best in the Hyuga clan, and under the guidance of Hyojin, he has already mastered the Een seal. Whether it is talent or physique, he is much stronger than Hyojin before the injection of the gene serum. It stands to reason that he is qualified to bear the Tenseigan. The third update is here. It's the end of the month. Students who still have monthly votes, please support me. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1194. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. A ninja named Saizuki had appeared in my village, and he had also joined the celebrity team of Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke. With the identity of Born from Nowhere, he had blended into the circle of the 15 roaches of Mai. As for the kaleidoscope Uchiha Shinichi of the Uchiha family, he suddenly applied for a private training ground in the Forest of Death and moved from the Uchiha family's land to the Forest of Death with the excuse of developing ninjutsu. Apart from this, there was nothing else worth paying attention to in this month. And in this seemingly peaceful month, Kuroto secretly made all the preparations, all the things that should be dealt with before the ceremony, all the preparations that should be made, all the deployments that should be prepared were completed. Belle pouted and said, "Kuroto, why are you daydreaming again?" "Of course not. I'm listening carefully." Hyojin smiled awkwardly. Today, he had deliberately taken the time to accompany Belle because he had decided to carry out the ritual that would inevitably lead to his death tomorrow. However, listening to Belle talking about daily trifles, he could not help but be a little distracted, thinking about the ceremony tomorrow. Belle said softly, "If you have something to deal with, then go do it. There's no need to accompany me." After being together for so long, Belle could more or less sense what Hyojin was thinking and doing. She could even rely on her woman's intuition to distinguish whether the Hyojin she saw was the real Hyojin, a shadow clone, or someone else pretending to be him. However, She would not expose this because she knew that Hyojin must have a reason for doing this. At this time, Hyojin pulled Belle in front of him and quietly hugged her. Belle, who was being hugged by Hyojin, was a little surprised because this was the first time Hyojin had expressed his feelings so directly, which made her feel a little uneasy. "What's wrong with you? Is there something wrong?" "No." After a pause, Hyojin said, "I just want to hug you." Ling gently stroked Hyojin's back. "Is it because of the village?" "Right, the situation in the shinobi world is so complicated, and the burden of the village is on you. Naruto, you must be very tired, right?" "Yes, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do anything today. I don't want to think about anything. I just want to be a quiet, salted fish. Tell me more interesting things that happened in your hospital. I want to hear them." Hyojin buried his face in Belle's body. Belle laughed and said, "You're Naruto, and you're still acting like a child. If others see this, you'll lose face." Hyojin joked, "I'm Naruto. If anyone dares to speak ill of me, I'll deduct their salary." The two of them chatted and laughed until night fell. When the sky darkened and night fell, the tired Belle slowly fell asleep. Hyojin got up and stretched his body. Then, he covered Belle with a blanket. "It's time to go." Looking at the sleeping Belle for the last time, Hyojin said to himself. To be honest, he had released too many emotions today. He vaguely felt that Belle seemed to have felt something, so he couldn't add any more psychological burden to Belle. So, he didn't mention anything about the ritual or death. Moving his gaze away from Belle, the gentleness on Hyojin's face gradually disappeared. He returned to his usual calmness, and his eyes were even colder than usual. Swoosh, leaving behind a shadow clone, Hyojin disappeared from the room. Tomorrow morning, this shadow clone would find a closed training ground in the village under the excuse of training. At that time, even if Hyojin's real body died in the ritual, causing the shadow clone to suddenly disappear, it would not cause any panic in the village. Flying at high speed, Hyojin only spent half a day to arrive at the ritual site in the vast desert of the Wind Nation. At this time, the ritual site had already changed beyond recognition. The ground was almost covered with solid stone bricks. In the center stood a simple but exquisitely crafted altar. Around the altar area, there were two huge barriers. One of them was a barrier that shielded the fluctuation of chakra, and the other was a barrier that prevented sandstorms from attacking the altar area. The main material of these two barriers was the black stick made of Xiangpo's reincarnation eye. So, the output was extremely high, and the effect was far better than ordinary barriers. It was also because of the existence of these two barriers that the whole altar area was clean and tidy, which was incompatible with the surrounding sea of sand. Landing on the altar, Hyojin looked around and did a final check. At this time, Xiangpo, who had been waiting at the altar area, came up and said, "Sir, you're here." Hyojin asked casually, "How are the preparations?" Xiangpo quickly replied, "Everything is ready. My instructor and I are already on guard nearby. They will ensure that no desert creatures will stray into the altar area and interfere with your ritual." The instructor mentioned by Xiangpo is naturally the Kazekage puppets of the three generations. AI and the Kazekage puppets of the three generations. One has the Jinchuriki, and the other has the magnet release Kekiai Genkai. In this desert environment, let alone expel ordinary desert creatures, even if they encounter a Kage-class ninja here, they will have the power to fight. Hyojin then asked, "Are you proficient in Edo Tensei Jutsu?" "Yes." Xiangpo nodded heavily. This month, Hyojin also took the time to do two things. One was to cultivate a clone in the air fortress as an offering for Edo Tensei Jutsu, and the other was to guide Xiangpo to learn Edo Tensei Jutsu. After all, even if you want to resurrect in the form of Edo Tensei Jutsu, you still need someone to perform the technique. A dead person can't perform Edo Tensei Jutsu on himself. In addition, considering that the strength of the offering will affect the strength of Edo Tensei Jutsu, after some consideration, Hyojin decided to use the Yang release clone as a template to clone an offering. This is because among all of his clones, except for the Wind release clone, the yang release clone is the strongest. However, the wind release clone is something that has a small probability of happening. Therefore, using the yang release clone as a template is the best offering he can make with his current technology. In addition, considering that during the Fourth Shinobi War, Orochimaru used White Zetsu's clone as an offering, and the Edo Tensei was able to give birth to a Hokage with strength close to that of his previous life. Therefore, using the yang release clone, which is also fused with the cells of Hashirama, as an offering should be the safest and safest choice. Kuroto slowly raised his head and looked at the sky fortress floating outside the altar area. Then, he leaped and flew towards the sky fortress. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1195. Although he already knew the result of this ritual, Hyojin did not relax because of it. On the contrary, in order to figure out why the ritual failed, he put out 120% of his energy and made sure that every step was foolproof. Therefore, in order to ensure that the giant Tenseigan in the sky fortress will not be noticed by Otsutsuki Samurai on the moon when he carries out the ritual, he deliberately moved the sky fortress to the altar area. In this way, not only can he use the enchantment to cover the giant Tenseigan chakra fluctuation in the sky fortress, but he can also access all the items needed for the ritual, including the 6 clones. Coming to the laboratory of the sky fortress, Hyojin slowly walked to the large nutrition tank containing the 6 clones. After glancing at the display on each nutrition tank and confirming that the physical signs of the 6 clones are very normal, he took the 6 clones out of the nutrition tank one by one and put them into 6 sets of portable storage cabins that were prepared in advance. Then, he came to another large nutrition tank and took out the other yang release clone that was used as the sacrifice for Edo Tensei. Because the technology has matured, this newly created yang release clone has no obvious difference in data compared to the clone that was developed by Hyojin before, just in order to shorten the cultivation cycle, reducing the cultivation period that originally needed more than a month or even 2 months to 1 month. Hyojin almost spent twice the cost on this sacrifice. After taking out 6 clones for the ritual and 1 for Edo Tensei, a total of 7 clones, Hyojin came to the Ghost Sprout cultivation room again. In the cultivation of Ghost Sprout, Hyojin didn't spend much time and effort. This is because the technical difficulty of Ghost Sprout is actually not high. The Danzo's ritual has already developed Ghost Sprout enough. After all, Ghost Sprout mainly serves the first stage of the ritual, which is the fusion stage of the body. When the ritual enters the second stage, the role of Ghost Sprout plummets. And when it came to the third stage of breaking through to the 6th Daos realm and the 4th stage of breaking through to the bloodline net, the Ghost Sprout implanted in the body would no longer be of help, but would instead become a hindrance. Once I reach the 3rd stage, I can consider killing the Ghost Sprout in my body. Hyojin will never make the same mistake as Hiriko and Danzo did. The Demon Sprout is only used to help him absorb the energy of the 6 clones with different attributes. Therefore, after the fusion is completed, the Demon Sprout will no longer exist. Moreover, he could not allow Ghost Sprout, an uncontrollable monster that could devour flesh and blood at will, to reside in his body for a long time. Thinking of this, Hyojin took out the most active Ghost Sprout from the incubator, and then went to the storage of the Sky Fortress. Among the scrolls that sealed various ninjutsu, he picked out a scroll called Ice Coffin. Under high temperatures, the activity of the Ghost Sprout would increase. This is one of the reasons why Danzo chose to hold the ceremony in the lava cave, and Hyojin chose to hold the ceremony at noon in the middle of the desert. Using high temperature to enhance the activity of the Ghost Sprout, Hyojin can also use low temperature to reduce or even kill the activity of the Ghost Sprout. The ninjutsu sealed in the Ice Coffin is a powerful ice release ninjutsu performed by Hyojin's water clone. As long as it is activated through the scroll, it can instantly freeze an area with a radius of about 10 meters around the scroll, which is almost enough to cover more than half of the altar. Taking advantage of the sudden drop in temperature due to the influence of the ice release ninjutsu, Hyojin can take the opportunity to kill the weakened ghost sprout and eliminate this hidden danger from his body. Once the ghost sprout is killed, Hyojin, who has mastered rain pull, can repel the ice coffin at any time and allow the ceremony to continue. Using rain pull to carry the 7 portable storage cabins, Hyojin left the sky fortress and slowly descended to the center of the altar. Xianglin, who was waiting on the altar, asked Hyojin, "Sama, what else do you need me to do now?" Hyojin pointed to the portable storage cabin containing the offering of Edo Tensei and said, "Take that offering and step aside." "Yes." Xianglin nodded, then carefully launched Mammoth Tensei, carrying the portable storage cabin containing the offering, and left the altar. After Xianglin left with the offering, Hyojin waved his hands, and the other 6 portable storage cabins moved to the 6 corners of the altar under the control of an invisible force. Because what Hyojin wants to fuse with her soulless clones, he doesn't need to prepare a torture rack on the altar like Hiriko and Danzo did, so he replaced the torture rack with portable storage cabins that can maintain the activity of the clones. After completing all the preparations, Hyojin stood quietly in the center of the altar. The only thing he lacks now is time. He wants to carry out the ceremony at noon when the temperature is the highest. Under the altar, Xianglin looked at her watch for a while, then looked at the altar. Her face was full of anxiety. She knows the heavy responsibility on her shoulders, because Hyojin has already told her that this ceremony will inevitably fail, and there is no need to take any chances. Therefore, her next action is directly related to Hyojin's life and death, and such a heavy burden makes the 13-year-old Xianglin uneasy for fear of negligence and betraying Hyojin's trust. In the distance, Gaara stood quietly on a sand dune, looking in the direction of the altar in the sandstorm that blotted out the sky. In an area without a windbreak barrier, the world is completely chaotic, so people who are trapped in it can't distinguish north from south, east, west, up and down, left and right. Fortunately, Gaara is a Jinchuriki, so he has natural control over the sand, so the sand around him will form a barrier to help him resist the endless storm. I hope everything will go well. After a silent prayer, Gaara retracted his gaze and scanned the surroundings seriously. On the other side, 3 generations of Kazekage puppets controlled the iron sand, slowly moving forward in the sandstorm, meticulously patrolling this sea of sand that has no life at all. On the altar, after a while, the sun above his head became hotter, and Hyojin's shadow on the ground gradually shrank to his feet, so he suddenly opened his eyes. Time's up. Almost at the same time, he implanted the ghost sprout into his body, and, at the same time, he started the ceremony. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1196. After implanting the ghost sprout into his body, Hyojin immediately felt a kind of discomfort like a foreign invasion. Then he suddenly found that his Tenseigan seemed to have some kind of suppression on the ghost sprout that was implanted in his body. As soon as he used his pupil power, the restless ghost sprout became a lot more obedient. Kuroto let out a light sigh as he figured out some problems. According to the information he collected, Danzo was significantly less affected by the ghost sprout than Hiriko. Before, he always thought that this was because Danzo had entered the 2nd stage of the ritual, and after the fusion, his body was stronger than Hiriko's. Now that he thought about it, the reason for this difference is probably not a problem of physical strength, but that Danzo has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that Hiriko doesn't have. And it is the existence of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that helped Danzo suppress the ghost sprout. After confirming this, Hyojin's heart calmed down. Now that his Tenseigan has a strong suppression on the ghost sprout, it will be easier to kill the ghost sprout in the ritual than he expected. Soon, he relaxed the suppression on the ghost sprout and began to use the ambient temperature to stimulate the activity of the ghost sprout. Walala, like an inflated balloon, the ghost sprout expanded rapidly under the stimulation of the high temperature. From the size of a thumb, when it was implanted, it instantly swelled to the point where it almost swallowed Hyjin's body. Not only that, but the film-like transparent sprout, like a round tentacle, reached out to the 6 portable storage cabins on the altar. Looking at this amazing scene on the altar, Xiang Lin couldn't help but exclaim. Immediately, she suddenly realized that she shouldn't have made a sound and disturbed the ritual, so she quickly covered her mouth, but the horror and the Rinnegan in her eye sockets couldn't be calmed. On the altar, the violent expansion of the ghost sprout did not make Hyjin panic. Although this speed was somewhat beyond his expectations, he still calmly controlled the progress of the ritual. At this moment, the sprout of the ghost sprout on his body had already come into contact with the clones in the portable storage compartment. One by one, the clones were pulled out of the portable storage compartment under the absorption of the sprout. They slowly approached Hyjin, who was standing in the middle of the altar. "It's time." After muttering to himself, Hyjin pressed his hand on the gourd magic artifact at his waist and removed the seal on the dragon vein. From the first stage of fusion, a large amount of chakra is needed. But now is not the time to use Ein's seal, 8 inner hidden gates, and the giant Tenseigan. So Hyjin chose the dragon vein that can't be extracted in large quantities at once as the source of the first stage of chakra. In the blink of an eye, 6 clones with different attributes of chakra, water release, fire release, wind release, earth release, thunder release, and yang release were dragged into the expanding ghost sprout by the sprout. At this time, if you stand and watch from a distance, you will find that Hyjin's Ein release and the 6 clones on the altar seem to be wrapped together by a large transparent jelly. As the 6 clones were all pulled over by the ghost sprout, Hyjin suddenly had a very wonderful feeling. It was a sense of fusion that he had never experienced before. It was as if all his perceptions, such as vision, touch, hearing, taste, etc., were extended through the ghost sprout. At this moment, the ghost sprout, which expanded in size like a jelly, seemed to have become a part of his body, able to transmit his perception and carry out his will. The fusion has begun. Hyjin knew that although the 6 clones had not yet integrated into his Ein release, the fusion had already begun from the moment the 6 clones were wrapped by the ghost sprout. Dong, 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 dong. The swollen ghost sprout on the altar pulsed like a heart and made a frightening sound. Obviously, the high temperature of the environment made the ghost sprout reach an extremely high activity, saving Hyjin a lot of trouble. In this case, Hyjin did not even need to control anything, and the highly active ghost sprout would instinctively fuse. Therefore, Hyjin did not waste his own chakra to artificially speed up the fusion. After calming his mind, Hyjin did not lose himself in the changes of his senses. He was not in a hurry to monitor the process of the fusion. Gradually, with a burst of pulsation, the swollen ghost sprout began to shrink. At first, the contraction was very slow, and it was difficult to see with the naked eye, but as time passed, the pulsating ghost sprout shrank faster and faster. In the end, almost every time it pulsed, the swollen ghost sprout would shrink a lot. And as the ghost sprout shrank, the 6 clones wrapped in the ghost sprout also gathered around Hyjin's Ein release body, and then naturally integrated into Hyjin's Ein release body. This feeling, for a moment, Hyjin did not know how to describe it, because it was completely different from what Kuroto had expected. His fusion this time was neither as thrilling as Hiriko's fusion, nor as hysterical as Danzo's fusion. It was as if everything was natural, and he didn't even feel much discomfort. Kuroto didn't even feel much discomfort. Is it because my spirit body has already merged with these clones? Or is it because there is no other soul in these bodies, so the fusion is more natural and easier? No matter which reason it was, it showed that Hyjin's thinking was right. The 6 clones he cloned with his own cell tissue had almost no rejection during the fusion, and the fusion effect far exceeded that of Hiriko and Danzo. Hyjin was not happy for too long, and he quickly restrained his emotions. Such an effect meant that he had completely overcome the first stage of the ritual, and because there was no trouble with the soul, he should be able to pass the second stage smoothly. Although the process was a little unexpected, it was still within his expectations. For him, the real difficulty of the ritual was always the third and fourth stage that he had never experienced before, so it was far from the point of excitement. Soon, the ghost sprout completely shrank, and the last sprout also shrank into Hyojin's body. And together with the shrinking ghost sprout, the 6 clones with different attributes of chakra also silently integrated into Hyojin's body without any exaggerated process. Then, there were some slight changes in Hyojin's in-release body. There were some changes in his appearance and body shape, but these changes were so subtle that even Xiang Lin, who had the Rinnegan, did not notice it. However, this change could not be hidden from Hyojin himself. He could feel that he had many blood limit boundaries, and even his ocular power seemed to have increased a lot. The 3rd chapter is here. I'm still writing. There should be more tonight. There are only a few days left in this month. Students who still have monthly votes, please support me. Please. Chapter 1197. Hyojin just raised his hand, and a clear ice mirror appeared in front of him. Can it be used without a seal? Being able to use magic mirror ice crystal without a seal shows that Hyojin has not only mastered the ice release blood limit of water release avatar, but also the blood limit has been strengthened a lot after the fusion. After thinking about it, Hyojin tried to use dust release without a seal. As a result, he found that the use of dust release blood limit elimination still requires a seal, and can't be used without a seal like the ice release blood limit. However, Hyojin's mind is not entangled in this. The mastery of Kekiai limit and Kekiai elimination means that he has completed the 1st stage of the ritual, and the faint enhancement of the pupil power means that he has entered the 2nd stage of the ritual, which is the stage of increasing the strength of chakra. In this stage, the fusion of the different attributes of chakra in the body has actually begun. And according to the situation of the Danzo ritual, the first and the most intense fusion should be the 2 special attributes of chakra and chakra of yin and chakra. Only when they complete the fusion first and produce the power of yin and yang can they feed back the spirit body and the body, so that the ordinary Hyojin has the opportunity to hit the 3rd stage, to hit the promotion of life level. Soon, the power of yin and yang began to spread in Hyojin's body. And with the continuous accumulation of the power of chakra in the body, the first to benefit is naturally the Tenseigan in Hyojin's eye sockets. If Suijin's Tenseigan were like 2 gems shining like stars before, then after being nourished by the power of omniscient nature, the Tenseigan has become even more profound, to the point that it doesn't look like a physical gem anymore, but a real condensed star. My eyes, the huge impact made Hyojin have a strong sense of dizziness. He could feel a great power concentrated in his Tenseigan, which made it difficult for him to adapt for a while, and he staggered back and forth on the altar for a few steps before he could stand firm. Then, a sense of hunger that seemed to go deep into his bone marrow came into his heart. Chakra. I need more chakra. Hyojin finally experienced the feeling of the hysterical yelling on the altar for the need of chakra in the Danzo. This is an instinctive desire that cannot be resisted by reason, like a drowning man desperately trying to grasp all he can. Instead of fighting this instinct, Hyojin quickly opened the yin seal on his forehead and released the chakra he has worked hard to store over the years. Because he knows that the nature fusion of different attributes of chakra itself requires a lot of chakra to maintain. At this stage, Danzo used more than 1,000 chakra of my ninja to barely carry out the ritual, so he must provide enough chakra for the nature fusion in his body. While unlocking the yin seal, he also increased the demand for chakra from the dragon vein. The special nature of dragon vein chakra makes it impossible for him to extract too much in a short time, so he can only use other chakra sources to dilute the proportion of dragon vein chakra to use dragon vein chakra. With the opening of the yin seal, a large number of high-quality Tenseigan chakra gushed out from the seal area between Hyojin's eyebrows, immediately alleviating his need for chakra. Because a large number of high-quality Tenseigan chakra filled his body, he can also use the balance of Tenseigan chakra to extract a large amount of Dragon Vein chakra. With a sufficient supply of chakra, the nature fusion in Hyojin's body continued. Especially the fusion of Yin attribute chakra and Yang attribute chakra gradually reached a perfect state. Hyojin waved his hand, and a black stick stretched out from his palm. I can create the black stick now. Hyojin's heart moved. This is a progress that even Danzo hasn't reached. That is to say, with the appearance of the black stick, Hyojin has surpassed Danzo in the second stage, becoming the person who has gone the furthest in the shinobi world in the Kekkei Genkai ritual. And the appearance of the black stick that represents yin-yang release also means that the second stage has been completed. Isn't this a bit too smooth? Hyojin was a little surprised. If it weren't for Ziyuan's death prophecy, with the current smoothness of the ritual, Kuroto is confident that he can break through the Kekkei Genkai net. At this time, Hyojin entered the third stage of the ritual, which is the initial stage of completing the 7 chakra attributes of yin-yang 5 elements and condensing the truth-seeking ball. As long as this stage is completed, he can enter the 6th path level, and his life level will also increase, and he will no longer be a weak mortal. In the original time and space, Madara, who reached the 6th path level, was kicked away by Guy who opened the gate of death. Even the heart, a fatal weakness of the human body, was completely destroyed, but it still recovered in a moment. This is the improvement of life level. Because once you reach the 6th path level, many of the vital parts of the body are no longer real vital parts. And it is not an exaggeration to say that you are an immortal. And now that Hyojin has completed the yin-yang fusion, with the yin-yang release as the foundation, he began to fuse the attributes of the 5 elements of chakra. He held his breath and carefully added the 5 elements of water, fire, wind, earth, and thunder chakra into the yin-yang release. In an instant, a strange chakra began to grow in his body. This is easier than I thought. At this time, even with Hyojin's calmness, he couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth. Perhaps because he had developed too many blood limit and blood elimination, he was very familiar with the technique of fusing the attributes of chakra, which also provided great convenience for him to fuse the 7 attributes of yin-yang and the 5 elements of chakra. It was almost the first time he tried, and he had a lot of results. But as the nature fusion continued, he was shocked to find that the chakra stored in the yin seal and the chakra extracted from the dragon vein had been consumed without him noticing. Why is the consumption so big? Suppressing the shock in his heart, Hyojin quickly made a hand seal and communicated with the Sky Fortress not far from the altar, and from the main power room of the Sky Fortress, he drew the Moryo chakra. At the same time, along with the Moryo chakra, he sucked a big mouthful of dragon vein chakra. However, the large amount of chakra he had just extracted only lasted for a few breaths, and it was instantly consumed, as if it had never existed. 4th update. Please continue to beg for monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1198. After a brief moment of surprise, Hyojin quickly adjusted his mentality and became more focused. The 3rd stage required far more chakra than the 2nd stage. He had expected this before the ceremony, so even though the sudden increase in chakra consumption caught him off guard, it wasn't enough to make him panic. Don't panic. After calming himself down, Hyojin once again communicated with the main power room of the Sky Fortress. In an instant, the wind and clouds in the sky changed, and a dark and dense chakra pillar with evil energy poured out from the Sky Fortress and fell on the altar. The violent chakra waves spread in all directions like waves of air and finally hit the barrier outside, disappearing into nothingness. At this moment, the inside and outside of the barrier were like 2 different worlds. The evil chakra was undoubtedly the chakra that Hyojin had sealed in the main power room, the Moryo, human Jinchuriki Shino's body. This time, Hyojin didn't hold back. He used almost all his power to extract the Moryo chakra. If someone was outside the main power room at this time, they would definitely be able to hear Shino's crazy roar. At the same time, Hyojin continued to extract the dragon vein chakra from the gourd on his waist. Due to the existence of a large amount of Moryo chakra, the natural energy in the dragon vein chakra was maintained at a relatively safe ratio in the mixed chakra, so it wouldn't affect Hyojin's body. After completing the first 2 stages, Hyojin, who had merged all 6 of his clones, had reached the limit of the 6th Daos level and below. Now, even compared to Nagato, who had the 6th Daos immortal body, Hyojin wasn't much weaker. Therefore, Hyojin's body's ability to withstand the natural energy invasion was much stronger than before, allowing him to extract more dragon vein chakra at once. Phew! After a few breaths, Hyojin heaved a sigh of relief. Under the situation where he was transferring chakra at all costs, the yin, yang, 5 elements, and 7 attributes of chakra in his body finally continued to fuse. And, with the nature fusion being carried out again, Kuroto personally experienced how terrifying the consumption of chakra is in the 3rd stage of the ritual. The 3rd stage of chakra that combines 7 attributes consumes 10 times more energy than the 2nd stage of chakra that only combines yin and yang attributes. And this is only the 3rd stage. At this point in the ceremony, Hyojin had vaguely realized the reason for the failure. It was most likely chakra. There might be other reasons, but the main reason was definitely chakra. In fact, during the previous battle with Nagato, Hyojin had a doubt. At that time, he, Nagato, and Otsutsuki Samurai were the 3 strongest ninjas who stood at the peak of the ninja world. However, the whole battle only lasted a few hours. The direct confrontation between the 3 of them only added up to a few minutes. This was the reason why he sighed. But he knew that he had reached his limit. Even without the Ghost Sprout's rampage, the only source of chakra he could use was the giant Tenseigan in the air fortress. And a giant Tenseigan alone obviously couldn't support him through the 4th stage, which consumed more energy to complete the 2nd life upgrade. Therefore, he made an instant decision to use the giant Tenseigan that hadn't been consumed to solve the rampage of the Ghost Sprout and complete all the aftermath work. Suddenly, Hyojin clasped his hands and drew the giant Tenseigan chakra. Suddenly, a tyrannical Tenseigan chakra gathered through the void and gathered in his body. With the support of the giant Tenseigan, the Tenseigan in his eye sockets suddenly shone brightly. Immediately, he looked down at the ghost sprout that was constantly coming out of his body and said coldly, "You're courting death." The 2nd chapter is here, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. I continue to write. There should be another chapter in the evening. Hyojin was in so much pain that he almost fainted, but he didn't dare to. He could only force his will and use the corner of his eyes to glance at the body that was first pulled out by Ghost Sprout. Although it was a bit bloody, he could still recognize that it was his water escape clone at a glance. Then, another bloody body was pulled out by the Ghost Sprout, then the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and finally the 6th. The further it went, the smoother the Ghost Sprout's tearing. The scene from Ziyuan's death prophecy appeared. At this moment, looking from below the altar, Hyojin on the altar seemed to be pushing away the bodies that had fused into his body. In addition to the great pain, as the clones were pulled out of his body one by one, a great sense of weakness enveloped him, causing him to be in a trance for a while. Without a doubt, after the 6 clones were forced out of his body, the 6th Daos level that he obtained from fusing with the 6 clones was rapidly falling. And as his life level fell, the side effects of opening the death door were suddenly revealed. I don't have much time left. If it wasn't the 6th Daos level, or there was no strong intervention of the 6th Daos level, then opening the death door would inevitably lead to death. And the backlash brought about by forcibly interrupting the ritual would also make Hyojin's body have a high probability of disintegration. This was why he didn't stop when he was ahead and forced out the 6 clones. With his current situation, he had to get rid of the ghost sprout before his realm completely fell. Otherwise, the uncontrollable ghost sprout would devour him and fuse him with his 6 clones again, turning him into a monster of flesh and blood without a soul and consciousness. So, Hyojin endured the pain and dizziness and activated the ninjutsu seal scroll prepared in advance. Voila! As the ninjutsu scroll was activated, the frost spread in an instant, and in the blink of an eye, it froze the expanded ghost sprout. The rapidly falling temperature immediately reduced the activity of the ghost sprout to the lowest. Coupled with the suppression of Hyojin's Tenseigan, the ghost sprout completely lost the power to resist at this time. Without the slightest hesitation, Kuroto roared. Rain wheel manipulation. Boom! Under the huge repulsive force, the frozen ghost sprout broke into pieces along with the ice, and then was ruthlessly swept out of the altar, turning into ice crystal fragments scattered on the ground. Xiang Lin, who was guarding under the altar, immediately retrieved the 6 clones that were also repelled by the rain wheel and put them into the portable storage compartment one by one. These 6 clones were not afraid of low temperatures and would not completely lose their activity under the extremely low temperature like the ghost sprout.